Good evening, everybody. Professor Mani, welcoming you on behalf of the Bombay Management Association to yet another exciting learning day as part of the Digital Leadership Summit, Day 3. As all of us realize that over the last 2 days, we've had a wonderful array of speakers, excellent new ideas coming in, and so many good case studies and experiences, which we can hope to implement back at the workplace. As we head towards the weekend and also the festival around the corner, we thought we must cap up Day 3 with some explosive sharing of ideas, explosive in the form of innovative, path-breaking ideas. And to lead the efforts for us today, we have with us the CEO, founder CEO of Fractal Analytics, Srikant Velamakanni. Welcome, Srikant. Thank you very much for accepting our request. We at BMA are honored to have you here this evening. As part of the entire activity of the Digital Leadership Summit, we are aware that we shall be having 2 more panel discussions after this session on the marketing and finance tracks, where we will have 5 illustrious speakers following the track that Srikant is going to lay out to discuss various applications related to digital in the areas of marketing and finance. On that note, I'd like to, on behalf of my team, Supriya, Chintan, and Jagmohan, ably supported by our secretariat, Lakshmi, Oindrilla, and Supriya, welcome each one of you, members, guests, invitees, and participants to the 3rd day of the Digital Leadership Summit. It's very apt that we'd like to begin with a little video to set the perspective once again about this Digital Leadership Summit. Supriya, may I request you to do the honors?
Sure.
Thank you, Supriya. Now it's my honor and privilege to introduce to you Srikant. As I mentioned to you, the Group CEO and Vice Chairman of Fractal Analytics. Having completed his formal education at IIT Delhi and IIM Ahmedabad, after a couple of years decided that he would like to do best what he enjoys, and that is creating something which could be written in the annals of history. And so was born in the year 2000, Fractal Analytics. And today, over the last 20 years, everyone who is in the field of analytics would certainly agree with me that Fractal is a company that is looked up to, adored, and seen as a path breaker when it comes to innovation in the digital and technology space. Often part of several national and international conventions, part of the NASSCOM committee that steers the thinking process and the entire process of technology enablement in our country, Srikant is a very, very humble person, full of great ideas and a wonderful person. It's always a pleasure to listen to you, Srikant. Once again, welcome, and may I hand over the floor to you to wow our participants. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Mani. And all of you I know have been living, breathing AI for the digital transformation for the last couple of days. And when you ask people what is digital transformation, typically it looks something like this. And I mean, depending on your point of view, digital transformation is a lot of different things, right? And there's a lot of confusion. And I know you spent 2.5 days on this, but if I were to ask you what is digital transformation, I hope you have a definition. And I hope it doesn't sound like this, like all of you. It is, and you ask a bunch of tech people, you end up hearing these things like these: Industry 4.0, IoT, RPA, digitization, quantum computing, AI, big data. I mean, it's an alphabet soup of technology buzzwords, right? This is what you hear. And you think, okay, so what? I mean, it's just latest tech. That's what digital is. That's digital transformation. I'm here to sort of clear that air a little bit and give you a little bit more, at least my perspective on what digital transformation is. And it's not really an alphabet soup. It is in fact a data-driven way of building a smarter business. It is really, that's the heart of what digital transformation is all about, because eventually it's about leveraging data and it's about being smarter as a company, right? And if you can split that into a few different things, I think I will actually use this framework for the rest of this discussion. It is actually about using data to drive better executive decisions, better decisions overall. It is about improving consumer or customer engagement. How can I get better? How can I understand my consumers better? How can I make more personalized offers to them, etc.? It is about eliminating inefficiencies. It's about increasing productivity. It's about just doing the best, right? No waste, right? That's another one. It's also about building better products faster. Especially if you think about many industries, the failure rate of innovation is extremely high. 90 to 95% of new products fail, right? And some industries, it's even worse than that. You know that 98% of startups fail within 2 years of starting. Sorry, within 10 years of starting, and 50% of them fail in the first 2 years of starting. In general, product innovation is full of failure, right? And finally, it's also about fighting disruption, because for every business model that exists in the world, there is somebody else. There are many others, thousands of others. For every successful business model, there are thousands of others who are trying to poke away at that business model and do something and disrupt them, right? So it's about using data to build a smarter business across these 5 dimensions. That's how I think of digital transformation. And I'm going to give you a few examples of each of them so that we can get to some conclusions and some understanding. I'll start with using data to drive better executive decisions. And just a few months ago, March 21st, 2020, I got a call from the BMC Municipal Commissioner, Mr. Praveen Pardeshi, and he said, Srikant, we need help, because we had, at that time, 4 people across the country had died out of COVID, right? And there were about 100 or so cases across the world, but across India. But there was this fear that it's an exponential disease. How do we tackle this? Help us in creating better decision-making as we tackle the pandemic. And throughout the next few months, now it's been 8 months or so of working together. And, did I miss the slide? Okay, the problem statement kept changing. Every single time, the problem statement was something else. To begin with, it was, we got the data of all the arrivals, right? All the people who showed up in Mumbai from various parts of the world. That was the first data set that we got. It said, okay, these are people who have come to Mumbai from various parts, and we want to make sure that where they are, we want to know if they're buying any prescription medication. We want to know that if they have any symptoms, can we isolate them, test them, track them, trace them, right? And trace their contacts, like who have they gotten in touch with? That was the first problem. After a few days, that problem became something else. The problem was, now the disease is spreading, right? And we want to know within the city of Mumbai, where are the places where where are emerging COVID hotspots, right? We want to know if this area that we've been ignoring because there are only a few cases there, maybe that's the next big hotspot. How do we know? And we could say, we built something called the real-time transmission indicator, RT. And with that, we could say, next few days, where are the cases likely to go? And the decisions they were making were, can we create containment zone there? Can we create additional facilities there? Then it became, once the problem became somewhat more severe, the problem was, how do we model the healthcare capacity? Initially, it was just about PPE, and it's about ventilators. Do we have enough ventilators? Do we have enough PPE? After some time, it became, do we have enough healthcare workers? Because healthcare workers are working and they are beginning to struggle, right? And how do we make sure that we have enough capacity of healthcare, and how do we know what's next few days likely to be? After that, it was about how do we reopen the industry, right? And now if we open up any industrial area, and this is, by the way, some of this was in Mumbai, some of this in Telangana and Karnataka, we were doing this across but the question was, if we open an industrial area anywhere, can we find out who are the people who travel to the industrial area? Because now when they travel, they may bring the disease and take the disease back. So then we know how the disease might spread across the city once we know which are the industrial areas to open. And therefore, can we sort out, can we rank order which industries to open first? That was the question. After some time, especially this came in Karnataka and Bangalore, the question was, can we, from the time somebody is COVID positive, can we make sure that they get to the right hospital or right quarantine facility within 2 hours? How do we enable that to happen? And then Mumbai was starting to say, okay, we have now more than 5,000 people who have died. And can we know what are the factors that actually influence, which drive mortality risk higher? What kind of comorbidities are important, right? Diabetes, for example, turns out to be important. Hypertension, blood pressure is important, not as much as diabetes. And by the way, it turns out that tuberculosis is one of the most important. Right? That's a must. It really significantly increases your mortality risk. And then age, of course, is a dimension. So what I'm trying to say is that the lots of problems the problem kept changing. The problem definition kept changing. And we need to continuously evolve. How do we enable all these decision makers? For example, doctors. How do we make sure that we give them the information so that they can make better decisions and better policies? And how can administrators, how can they make better decisions? This is about digital transformation, right? It was forced upon the city of Mumbai and the country of India and across the globe, but that's really an example of digital transformation to drive better decision making. Now, we also do this for a bunch of companies around the world. This is on the left, you see P&G. That's how they make decisions, all the data in one place so they can drive executive decisions. This has now become very common with what they call a CEO dashboard or executive dashboard, so that they can all come together, look at a problem holistically and make better decisions in minutes or hours and not really days and weeks. Right? This we do for a number of different players. Now, with that also come in, how can we enable decision making for people on the go, on their smartphone? We see everything on our smartphone. All of our Facebook, LinkedIn feeds are on smartphones. But if you look at business information, critical business information, it's not on my smartphone and it doesn't know who I am. Can it recommend the right decision to me? Can it really, can I interact with data in a more personalized way, like ask questions and get answers? And does it know ahead of time what is unusual, exciting, new? Can I tell you? So this is something that Fractal does. It's called Cuddle. It's about smartphone. It's about personalized information and enabling decision making. Right. Now, okay, this is where this slide was. Okay. Now, that's the first dimension. We said, how do we drive executive decisions using data? The second dimension we briefly alluded to was improving customer engagement. Now, one of those examples I want to give you is one of the largest telecom players in the world. And let's say an iPhone 12 is launched, or an iPhone 11 is launched. They get up to 25 million customers a month buying those products. They visit the online store of this telecom player. But only 1.5% of the people end up doing any transaction. Most of the others drop off. Right? Now, our idea was to understand the remaining 98% and plug a few holes. Like, why are people dropping off? Right? And therefore, if we can do a root cause analysis of why people are dropping off and give them the right information or the right documents or the right offers, can we increase the overall conversion rate from 1.5% to something else? And it turns out that we can improve it significantly. By about 26%, we could improve the overall conversion rate, which meant for this company, which is a really large company, it meant $100 million of additional revenue per month. So it created $1 billion additional revenue impact because we could plug a few holes, which were all digital, right? We were basically looking at the customers' flow to the website, and we were seeing where are they dropping off. What, for example, I may not be clear about the 2-year contract that comes with the phone, then I drop off. It may be clear that there's some part of the site's functionality is not working. It may drop off. It may feel that some offer that was on a different page. There could be several kinds of errors that are there in the way the service is delivered. If we can, using machine learning, if I can find out those errors and fix most of these errors real time, and some on a 24-hour cycle, I start to make improvements. And we show that 26% improvement in customer engagement and conversion rate because of that. This is about how do we increase customer engagement, and how do you make sure that their path to engaging with us is easy, it's personalized, it's the right recommendations, and so on. Okay, this is the overall the results of this which I just showed you, right? 25% increase in digital conversion, etc. Now, similarly, for many businesses, the idea is to create the next best action. If you've just logged into HDFC Bank, right? HDFC Bank should know who you really are, and therefore they should tell you exactly what you need to know, what you want to know, what you want to buy. Not necessarily just because mortgage is the most profitable product for HDFC Bank, that's not something they should sell to you every time. They should know, given your bank balances, given your credit card behavior, given your past purchases, what is the next best action? So Fractal has something called as customer genomics, but the idea is that businesses have to do the next best action. That's do what the customers need, what the consumers want, rather than what makes most money for you. But if you do that, you can improve the consumer engagement, and you can really get more out of your existing customers or new customers. Okay, we have discussed two dimensions so far. How do we make better decisions, and how do we improve consumer engagement? The third thing I want to get to is how do we improve overall, reduce inefficiencies, eliminate waste. One of the big wastes that happen is forecasting inaccuracies. And if you think about the amount of inventory that is wasted in companies, it's significant. As you know, in the food industry, 50% of all food that is produced is always wasted because of supply chain inefficiencies, or customers buying more than and this rotting away in the refrigerator. But one of the big things is about forecasting accuracy. So we started working with a tea manufacturer in UK, the largest tea manufacturers in the world. And they were trying to see that tea is a very mature category in United Kingdom, but it's a very promotional sensitive category. So if I know exactly how much tea is needed on the shelves of my stores, right, from this tea manufacturer had to supply those. So getting forecast accuracy was important. So we could use more recent machine learning and deep learning models to improve the forecast accuracy by 8 to 10%. Now I know exactly what is my demand and which shelf should I stock. So I should not be in out of stock situation, nor should I be in excess stock situation, right? And the interesting learning in this example was that we could improve it by about 8 percentage points in the first go. But then we realized that we need to use the intelligence of the demand planners. There are very, very smart demand planners who actually know a lot of stuff. They know things that is not exactly in your data, right? Because they can actually make phone calls. They have other sensory information coming from their knowledge and expertise. So when you take the demand planner information and mix it with the machine learning, that human plus machine gives you even better accuracy. But this is again, improving productivity and eliminating inefficiency is one of the largest examples for AI and analytics and digital transformation. Another example I want to give you is another consumer goods player who supplies to, let's say, the largest retailers in the world. Think of, in the American context, think of it as Walmart or Target or Kroger and companies like those, right? They ship products, right? And they have to be sitting on the shelves when consumers go and buy them, right? Now, interestingly, some of these big retailers have very, very strict policies. The shipments have to arrive just in time, right? If they say, I want on Tuesday between 5 p.m. and 8 p.m., this shipment should arrive. If it arrives before 5 p.m., you'll be fined. And if it arrives Tuesday, Wednesday, God forbid, you'll receive a fine. So this company that we were working with was paying $25 million in fines every year to one retailer, just one retailer, one of the largest retailers, but they were paying $25 million in fines because their products were just reaching a little early or a little late, right? So by making the right kinds of decisions on what kind of shipment pickup should be, using Bayesian learning and machine learning models, we could figure out exactly which shipment service to use, which is the right time to pick up, and what kind of during the cycle, what kind of decisions and changes to make so that we eliminate the inefficiency of it reaching early or late. This has improved the overall on-time shipment performance from 84% to 94%. right? Which essentially meant that they saved about $16-17 million of fines were eliminated because of that. It's a big, again, big improvement. And if you do this right, now this is a scaled operation, right? Now we are moving it to multiple retailers. But this is about a smarter business, because you don't want to use a very expensive shipment service and reach early and you'll get fined again for it. Again, you don't want to use a very slow shipment service and reach late. So you have to make the right decision at the right time, but you have all this data, and how do you build a smarter business? But this is how you can eliminate those inefficiencies, right? Another example I want to give you is in the manufacturing context. This is one of the largest dairy manufacturers in the world, based in Netherlands. And they essentially supply some dairy ingredient that goes into cakes and other ingredients. But this dairy ingredient that they use for various kinds of baking products has to be in the perfect consistency, perfect sort of softness, and there are multiple texture, there are multiple things that are required for the product quality, right? If the product quality is a little bit different from there, the retailers, the customers of these products can reject it, right? They were facing a bunch of rejections because they were not using machine learning to drive all the sort of small little plant machines that were there. There were data coming from there. If you use those machines, you could get the exact right consistency, which is like, okay, what is the temperature? What is the pressure? There are whole kinds of these variables. If you select the right kinds of variables, you can reduce the overall rejection rate significantly. And we could show that you could eliminate that inefficiency, that rejection rate in this Dutch retailer, Dutch dairy manufacturer. Another example of such reducing inefficiencies is what happened in UCSF Medical Center in 2009. One prescription was wrongly filled by a human pharmacist, and when she or he filled the wrong prescription, the patient who took that medicine unfortunately passed away. This was in 2009. So UCSF Medical Center decided that we are going to automate this whole thing, right? Then for the next few years, they built this robotic pharmacy, which basically takes a prescription and the illegible handwriting of the doctors. It reads exactly what is there in the prescription. It picks the medicines from the cabinets, packs the medicines, and gives it to the patient, right? While the pharmacist, and in the US context, pharmacists are the ones who are supposed to give you advice, right? They actually tell you what drugs to take and what are the side effects, and so the pharmacists are using their time to do that stuff and not to go and pick and pack medicines, which is what they ended up doing when this wasn't there. So again, change in definition of what the humans do and what the machines do, but it really dramatically improves inefficiencies and errors, which essentially saves lives. So more than 1 million prescriptions filled by this robotic pharmacy, not a single wrong one, right, since then. Now so we talked a lot about the inefficiency point. Let's get to the next point, which is about building better products faster, right? You want to build better products. You want to reduce your overall failure rate of products, but you also want to increase the speed of innovation. Like all of us are trying to increase the speed of innovation because that's where the world is. Somebody or the other is innovating if you're not innovating and is bringing that product to market faster than you. So when COVID hit, this was an example for us, right? So Fractal has a business called Cure.ai, right? It is an AI radiology business, right? It has got funded by Sequoia and Mass Mutual Ventures recently, but this business was basically doing chest x-rays, right? So if one of the products of Cure.ai is a chest x-ray. It can read a chest x-ray and find out about 25 different abnormalities in the chest x-ray automatically and fill a report that a radiologist can see. Now, this was there before COVID, but when COVID hit, we realized that one of the major use cases of chest x-ray could be to detect COVID. So immediately we built a solution to detect COVID-like abnormalities in a chest x-ray, right? Which is about bilateral opacities in the lungs, right? That's what we are looking for. And now that happened, and many hospitals in Mumbai and around the world started using it for detecting COVID, right? And using it along with the RT-PCR test to come up with medical decisions. But after that, the hospital in Italy came in and said, look, I want to use this to find out who are the ones who are likely to go into ICU. Can you look at the chest x-ray on day 1, day 2, day 3, up to day 10, and tell me whose lung condition is improving and which is deteriorating? Now, it turns out that humans are not very good at seeing the change between yesterday's x-ray and today's x-ray. It's very little. Humans are not very good at finding those changes, but a machine is phenomenally good. So we built the system to be able to look at the differential x-rays between every day and tell them which are the ones that are progressing in an adverse direction and therefore are likely to potentially be fatal situations, and potentially going to the ICU, right? So that was very helpful to the hospitals in Lombardy in Italy to make decisions around hospital capacity and also figuring out which patients might need extra care and which patients may not make it. Very, very important use case. But this happened in literally 3 weeks, right? From the time COVID hit, like I think I remember middle of February 10th or something, I was having this chat with Prashant, CEO of Cure.ai, and I was telling him, hey, can we do something with COVID? And his point was that, look, chest x-rays, because it's a little more, it requires, I don't know, maybe a test is better. And COVID was a little problem. Nobody knew it was going to be this big, right? Yes, we have a hearing in Wuhan, but between that day and middle of March, this solution was ready. And in end of March, early April, Italy, which was one of the largest places for the pandemic, was extensively using this to actually improve overall patient outcomes. Right, so that's the speed at which we need to move. And COVID obviously was a great example where we all move with speed. Similarly, I think Cure also has a chest as a head CT product, which has recently got FDA clearance as well. I'm going to skip that. Another example of building great products faster is this idea of medication adherence. As you know, many diseases are such that they're chronic diseases like diabetes, blood pressure. It's actually very important that patients take their medicines on time. If you take these medicines on time every day, very high chances that you can manage the disease and live much longer. But people don't, because people have, once the symptoms die down, they are irregular, right? So improving medication adherence is a very important thing. So when we started out in 10 years back, we were working with a big health insurer who said, can you predict medication adherence? Can you predict who's likely to take their medicines on time so that I can focus on the ones who are not taking their medicines on time and improve their medication adherence so my insurance bills will come down, right? So we started building that model and we realized that, we can't really improve it much. We can't really predict medication adherence much, because the best indicator of who will not take their medicines on time is who has not taken medicines on time before, right? If you have the past behavior, that's a very good indication of future behavior. We didn't have anything more intelligent to add to that. But there was another company which did not look at this problem this way. They built another solution. And this solution is called PillPack. Very beautiful solution recently bought by Amazon in 2019 for $1 billion, right? What they did was they basically said, so many people with chronic diseases have so many issues, but they take so many pills every day. And people in the 50s and 60s know that now once they have chronic conditions, they may have up to 15, 20, even 25 pills a day that they have to take. So what they did was take the prescription information and create these medicines, package them into these beautiful little sachets, right? Time is written. All you have to do is just tear that packet out and pop those pills, right? It combines all the pills into one thing. You just pop those pills, drink your water, and you're done, right? Beautiful solution, because they did not say, okay, maybe I cannot predict medication adherence, but my idea is not to predict, but I have to improve medication adherence, and they built a great product, right? So that's another example of building great products by actually understanding data, understanding consumer behavior, and then figuring out this is not the right problem statement. Let me reframe the problem statement and build it. Now, so we covered 4 dimensions. I'm come to the last dimension now, which is about fighting disruptions. This may not be applicable to all companies. For all big companies, one of our biggest fears is that there's some other company, it's called a smarter solution, which is doing something better, and I may be out of business because of the way they're doing it. Example, if you think of a company like BlackRock, I think 7 trillion. I think they have $7 trillion invested in the market. They're the largest asset manager in the world, $7 trillion. But they are extremely scared that there may be people who are using other alternate sources of data to invest in the stock markets and making more money. For example, it turns out that many companies are now trying to use satellite information. They're using satellite data to understand, for example, how full are the parking lots for a retailer, and use that information to see whether the retailer is going to meet their earnings guidance or improve or do better than their earnings guidance, and therefore which stock will go up. So using alternate data to invest in stock markets. Now, this is not the only thing. They're looking at earnings conference calls, and they're looking at the CEO and the CFO's voice tonality, right? What is the tone of the voice? Are they sounding confident? They're using deep learning, other models to deduce they're sounding confident and using that to actually make investment decisions. So people are using additional data sources. So if you want to be the disruptor, or if you're fighting disruption, you need to make sure that you're using all those new sources of data that are coming in, right? That's what Amazon is doing, right? Amazon is saying, okay, retailers, here's a touchless way to actually completely change your experience. Walk in, buy the products and walk out, no checkout required, right? And I will check you out automatically because I know exactly which products to buy. I know based on your entry and exit data, I know which customer you are, everything done, no touch required, right? That's how people are using new data to completely disrupt new data, new technology to completely disrupt an existing business, okay? And of course, there's again, if you're in the beauty industry, now beauty industry has recently started to become beauty tech industry. I mean, L'Oreal CEO, who's a very well-known French person, he came out 2 years back and said, we're no longer a beauty company. We are a beauty tech company. Like all finance companies have become fintech companies. All marketing companies have martech companies. I mean, everything has become tech. Now, this is the idea is that even in beauty, a category which may say, what is so tech about it? You can, right? Because using virtual reality, augmented reality, you can actually, it turns out you can actually significantly improve the consumer experience. And there are companies, smaller companies coming and disrupting the larger players. So you have to use data, you have to use AI and machine learning and technology to actually improve even your chances of fighting disruptors. So those are the things I have. Now, if you go under the hood, right? I gave you those 5 different areas of improving your digital performance and doing digital transformation. But if you look under the hood, what is under the hood, right? All these great examples, what is under the hood? Essentially 3 things, right? I'll start with design. In all these cases, what you would see is that never take a problem statement for what is given to you. Problem statements are different. You have to understand the right problem and design the right solution. So you have to ask many questions. Every single example I gave you, the problem statement kept changing. You have to understand what is the right problem and bring in a deep understanding of human behavior to solve that. Certainly, you need extraordinary algorithms. So everything, all examples I gave you had machine learning inside them, right? A lot of machine learning, AI techniques and data-driven techniques to actually make better decisions. And the least talked about topic is engineering, right? All this messy data across organizations. How do you connect those data pipelines in real time so that you can seamlessly make those decisions happen? This is the recipe. So if those are the 5 areas of digital transformation, but if you look at the recipe, it's about smart algorithms, it's great design and solid engineering that actually creates and solves these problems, right? And this is what if you want to get better, you have to get more sophisticated algorithms, you have to make your algorithms more explainable, more fair AI, frame the right problem, and basically instrument your business completely, connect all the data pipelines to build better decisions. So that's all I wanted to share with you. Back to you, Professor Mani.
Thank you so much, Srikant. That was indeed enthralling and inspirational. The conviction with which you shared so many of these ideas that you all have put into practice, I'm sure has given a lot of food for thought for all our participants. Thank you once again. And we now have the question and answer session. I have a couple of questions already with me, but in the meantime, those of you who would like to ask a question or share an experience is more than welcome to initiate it in the chat box. Srikant, one of the first questions that's come up is, could you relate 1 or 2 Indian companies whom you think has come of age in trying to use all this artificial intelligence and technology solutions and has really measured up?
I think, firstly, all the digital native companies in India, right? If you look at all the new age unicorns, the Flipkarts and the Paytms and the of the world, right? If you look at these digital companies, it comes naturally to them, right? It's just engineering. They AI and engineering are the same thing for them. They just build these in. Not necessarily the most sophisticated, but they're quite good relative to the other Indian companies. Number one, and so it's not that they have found the holy grail and they're better than everybody else. It's not true, and they may not be even benchmarked well enough to the rest of the world, but they're pretty good. Number one. Number 2, I would like to point out is some of the financial services companies were the first to start. I mean, I remember my journey started with HDFC Bank, actually with ICICI and then HDFC Bank. In 2001, I started working with, started helping HDFC Bank. It took me a year and a half to convince all of HDFC Bank, including Mr. Puri, that analytics is important and they could do better decisions in risk and marketing using analytics and AI. But the good thing about HDFC Bank is once they saw the light, they went hammer and tongs, right? They just went, I mean, we built all their risk models from 2001 to 2007. We built all their marketing infrastructure, models, etc. They started building a great marketing team. Over the years, they've become really good at doing this. Of course, what was good in 2007 or 8 is not good in 2020. So it keeps changing, right? A lot has changed in the last 10 years. But I mean, some of the banks have indeed done some really good work. Apart from that, consumer goods companies also use some of the MNC consumer goods companies like Unilever, for example. They're very good at some of the stuff they do. Unilever, P&G, Mondelez or Cadbury's. Some of these guys are pretty good at what they do as well because they have used some of the global examples. So these are some of the companies, but hardcore Indian companies, I mean, Asian Paint, for example, extraordinarily good in supply chain, They have invested in engineering in supply chain throughout for the last 20, 30 years. So they have been ahead. Of course, that doesn't necessarily mean that they have fully bought into the AI revolution and they're using AI extensively. But given how they have generally adopted technology, I do feel that they will be one of the few who will also adopt technology and adapt to the new environment.
All right. So that was an interesting array of companies that you mentioned. Would you also like to highlight, are these principles more applicable in a certain type of industry than some others? You did mention that IT companies, retail companies, FMCG companies see the benefit of this much faster than the other companies. Would you like to comment on this?
You know, it's absolutely, there's no such thing. Every single industry is ripe for disruption. Every single industry can get better using data. And instead of, we all work in our own industry, right? Forget what the other industry, just look in and see what are the various inefficiencies that exist in your organization, right? Which seem like they are not modern enough. I mean, look at Fractal. I could say, look, Fractal is forget using analytics for ourselves, right? Where is the most scaled part of our business? We look at hiring. We look at 100,000 resumes every year, 100,000, right? Of that, we hire 400 people. That's 0.4% of all the resumes that come to us. We select them, right? Now, how could we do that with AI? Of course, we can do that. We cannot afford to not use AI to shortlist the CVs. Right? We have to algorithmically screen CVs. That's required. So look at the part of a business which has the highest inefficiencies or which has the highest opportunity or which is under the attack from competition. You will find that that is a ripe source for making informed decisions. And if a few years ago, people used to say, I don't have data. My industry is not data rich. Every industry is data rich. Now with image, video, voice, text, other kinds of data sources, every single industry is very data rich. So, I mean, those are all, to me, irrelevant, right? I mean, just look at your industry and see what can you do to improve the overall performance of your business. And you will see that there's tremendous opportunities wherever you look.
Would you believe that the mindset of the CEO makes a lot of difference in the ability to adapt to all these changes that you've proposed?
Look, I think I subscribe to the theory that leadership matters in everything, in every single thing. Leaders have a way to champion things or to say that this doesn't matter and the world follows, that their troops follow, right? I mean, whether it is COVID or whether it is, you can see Donald Trump's leadership of COVID or whether it is any single matter, right? You will see that leadership matters. So a CEO matters, especially because if you're doing something that you've not done before, you still don't have a predictable way of figuring out that you will get results. So you need a little bit of faith and investment and patience. And if the CEO is not on board, of course, it's going to be harder to succeed, right? Because the first available evidence will say, look, I spent this $1 million. It didn't give me anything. I already told you it was not worth it. Let's stop it, right? For the first sign of failure, you stop. So it's good to have leadership support and championship. And therefore, I think, look, I mean, at the same time, depends on where you are, right? Just because, and that's also, don't take that as a reason to not do it, right? You can say, look, my CEO doesn't want it. How can I do it? Let the CEO get better. Then after that, I'll do it. That is, again, a very futile way of looking at it, right? You have to do what you can do at any point of time. If you're the CEO, yes, it matters. If you're not the CEO, whatever you do matters. So go ahead and do it.
Either way, you have to be convinced and the buy-in has to be 100%, as you're rightly saying. In your experience, what percentage of companies do you think in India, particularly Indian companies, have accepted this as a way of life and the use of AI, ML, etc.? Would it be the tip of the iceberg, or are things picking up now?
I would characterize all the companies into three buckets, right? One is what I call the skeptics bucket, right? These are people who are saying, okay, I know I've heard all this nonsense, this maybe it's something interesting, but I haven't, I think it's a lot of hype. These examples are from other industries. They're from games. They're, what if AI beats somebody at chess? How does it matter? How is it related to my business? Nothing, right? So they take every example and say that, okay, this is not relevant to me because in some ways I'm different, right? And maybe there's too much hype. Maybe it's not real. So that's the skeptics camp. The second camp is those are which I would call as explorers, right? These are people who are saying, look, this is interesting. I need to figure this out. Okay, I'm not really good at it, but I will start, I will learn, I will get better. The third one are what I would call as evangelists. They completely believe in it. They're using every day and they're telling the whole world, but may or may not be telling the whole world, but they really believe and they're making significant investments towards it. If you look at the third bucket, maybe only 2-3%, maybe 5% of Indian companies are there, right? But I can say that companies are moving from the skeptic bucket to the explorer bucket in droves as we speak. I think given how fast things are changing and how blindingly obvious it has become, I think now is the time. This is the kind of an idea whose time has come, and now nobody can stop an idea whose time has come. And this is what is happening right now. I started being in this industry 20 years back, so I obviously all this gray hair is because of that. But it is now. It has finally changed, right? It is really, it's really.
Sure. Mr. Sheetal Sanghvi is the managing director of a small SME, which is having 3 units and 1,500 employees. He would like to ask a question. Go ahead, Mr. Sanghvi.
Yeah, sir, actually, I am a MD in the company. And the query is, you can set my camera. Okay. So the query is, right now we are having semi-automatic and manual and automatic all the operations. And our company is manufacturing this woven sacks, packing of cement, sugar, fertilizer, food grain bags. And right now we have we have implemented some ERP software, but I think artificial intelligence or machine data machine, what we say science, that I think we are not done much. So doing any course or exactly at my level, would it help me, or how can I implement that? What type of industry it can be more suitable? Or even if we implement, do I really need to be educated and aware about it, or only my staff is being trained and they are handling it is enough for our organization to run successfully? What should be my role from my perspective, from MD?
Yeah, I'll give you a couple of sort of examples here. Right. Firstly, my suggestion is that don't think of it as a technology implementation. It is not a technology implementation. Think of it more as problem solving. How can I improve this set of decisions? How can I improve this process? How can I improve this? How can I reduce this inefficiency? How can I improve that metric? Think of it from an improvement on any dimension, and you work backwards from there. Take a decision or whatever and work backwards and say, what data can I use to make this decision any better? Think of it that way rather than think of it, okay, I implemented ERP, I must implement BI now. That's not, I don't think you'll get much out of a technology-led thinking around that. Right? Think more from do a problem-led, decision-led thinking than a technology-led thinking. That's my first example. Second, to your question around, how can, whether you should be involved or you should champion it. Look, I mean, I'll give you just one example of Mark Zuckerberg, CEO of Facebook. In 2010 and 2011, just at the time the company was going public, right? The company was just going public. It's now $1 trillion company or whatever, right? It was a $100 billion IPO even the time he went public. At that time, he disappeared for 3 or 4 days, and he was actually in Canada. Because there was this really nice a bunch of professors who were professors and PhD students who were doing these deep learning courses. Deep learning early days, like those days, when we were suddenly taking off. I mean, of course, in India, we started realizing it only in 2014 and 15, but in the US and other places, it was taking off in 2009, 10, 11. So he decided that it was so important that he took off from his work, went there and spent 3 or 4 days learning how to do this stuff himself, right? And came back, and then he could lead the rest of them, right? So that's just an example for, I mean, so there's only one kind of leadership I know, it is leading from the front. So yeah, that's what I would say.
All right, you did mention, Srikant, that banking industry, retail industry has, of course, been the forerunner in trying to implement some of these technologies. What is your opinion about the insurance industry? Is there more scope for them to use AI-based solutions?
Yes, indeed, indeed. In fact, insurance is, while insurance industry, relatively speaking, has always been 1 or maybe 2 steps behind financial service industry, right? That's how always been the way it has come through. Having said that, lately, insurance industry is doing some amazing work. For example, claims. If you look at claims experience, there are many companies in the US which do a complete automated claims processing using accident pictures, right? If you're a car accident, they take pictures, process claims, right? Or home insurance. We have done some of that work where you can actually inspect a home from drones, figure out, assess the damage, and assess the claim. They also have these adjusters in insurance industry. Like when you get a claim, you have multiple decisions to make. Should I settle this claim? Should I litigate this claim? Should I subrogate this claim, right? Or should I, so each of these decisions can be made using data. And if you bring in new data, you make better decisions. This is only in the claim side. Similarly, on underwriting side, they're using a lot of data to build better underwriting models. And they're also using this wherever it is allowed, they're using it to make pricing models. They're also using this to create better customer models, right? Which customers to write policy for, not to write policy, but depend, of course, all of these are there are regulations, and you have to be mindful of the regulations, and regulations differ state to state, country to country. But yes, it is ripe for tons and tons of examples. So some of Fractal's largest clients are actually insurance clients around the world today, and they're doing some very sophisticated work on the underwriting side, on the claim side, also on marketing side. They're doing some incredible work, because these days all insurance is getting bought online. At least in the US, everything is getting bought online. It's like financial services. And apart from all of that, they have huge disruption coming in, because once Uber's took off, right? Uber took off, their insurance premium are coming down because people are not driving enough. And their accidents are coming down. You can say accidents coming down, good for insurance companies. But when accidents come down, soon your premiums go down. So then they have a whole car rental insurance, it's going down the tube. And then there's a self-driving car. When that comes in, the whole industry goes for a toss. So there's a tremendous amount of disruption happening in insurance too. So insurance industry is a very exciting place to be in from an AI and machine learning standpoint and digital transformation standpoint as of today.
As you mentioned somewhere in the beginning also, the base of all this AI is data. And this brings in a lot of issues related to data security. What have been your experiences, and what would be some of the guidelines you would suggest in the implementation process?
Around data?
Data security.
So, I mean, look, I have, first of all, data security is super important, without a doubt. It's super important. And it certainly means that you have to have all the safeguards in place, because in the pandemic, especially, and even before, cybersecurity risks have increased 10x, right? So many companies are getting attacked, cyber attacked, including many Indian companies. So it's important. Second thing is about privacy and having transparency around data, right? What data you're capturing, being transparent. Every customer should have control over their data, right? They should be able to see their data and say, look, you're allowed to collect it or not allowed to collect it, right? That transparency and trust establishing with the customer is very important, right? Third is, when you're using this data to drive decisions, etc., be very careful that you're doing it in a way that's fair, right? I mean, there's a whole branch. I mean, again, we don't have time to talk about today, but there's a whole area called responsible AI, which is all about designing AI for fairness, for low, not bias, accuracy. There are all kinds of things, etc. It's important. Overall, look, I mean, there's not much to say about data security except to say that it is a super critical dimension of any business to take care of, and it is only getting more and more harder as people are, have data on their smartphones, people are mobile, people are in the pandemic working from home. All these have made the data security challenge even harder, but it does, and people are, because data is so valuable, these things end up being a very important source of, people, data stealing, getting stolen is an important dimension, and also has huge legal ramifications, because of which I think also data security becomes super important. It's not my area of expertise, but it is a very important area.
Fair. We have with us Mr. Inderpal Singh, who's been our former past president of the Bombay Management Association and an industry leader with Godrej for over 4 decades. Inderpalji, over to you.
Yeah, Srikant. Thank you, Srikant, for clarifying so many aspects of analytics and especially AI based. My question is that as a common citizen, we suffer in 3-4 areas in a very big way. One is the delays in settling bills in hospitals. Second thing is the pendency in judicial system, and probably the third is the processing of recruitment applications. Say, for example, in UP, for about 15 positions, they received some 20 lakh, 30 lakh applications. So have you ever received requests from them for making a pitch, or they have approached you to solve the problems? And what has been your experience there? Because, it's a good to have inefficiencies removed from private sector who are pursuing shareholder value paradigm, but citizens' life also ought to improve as the technology become more technology savvy.
Yeah, all three great examples, Dr. Inderpal. One I would say is that on the medical bill side, again, this is I haven't seen any such urgency or anything that anybody's asked for. On the judicial side, and improving the speed of the judicial decisions and removing backlog, there is work happening as we speak. There are different kinds of AI firms that are trying to look at all of this data and trying to create ways to shorten the cycle. So there's some interest in that. I can see that. And the third example was on recruitment related AI. And again, no government has approached us, but that's an area where a lot of work can take place. Of course, it's not, you have to be very careful because, fairness is important. And you can see that Amazon tried to do this algorithmic recruitment, and they realized that their system was biased against women because the way they built the system. So you have to be careful about that, but it is an area where a tremendous amount of potential exists. I'll tell you one more example where we have done some good work. It was post demonetization in 2016, I think. Was it? Yeah. We a month after that, 2 months after that, government started receiving all the money back, right? And they wanted to see which of those people who are bringing in cash were legit and not legit, and which are the ones where could be fraud happening. So we had to go after, look at all the transaction, all the data, right, of all these people, for each bank submitting data, plus income tax department has some amazing data on every individual. You'll be surprised what all they know, right? So using all that data to figure out who are the bad guys, and that could improve the revenue collection for the whole country and actually pick some of the fraudsters. We found some very interesting examples there as well. So there are, eventually government and public services will need more AI than anybody else. That is the experience across the world, even to detect terrorists. Look at Army, Navy. We do work with some of those agents, Army and Navy, but there's a tremendous amount of need for AI to drive smarter decisions, to look at enemy related data, satellite pictures, and even to improve the maintenance of the ships, for example, to do predictive maintenance of ships. And there's tremendous use for AI in the government. They should be the biggest users of the AI. And while Indian government does realize the potential of that, it's still very early days in actually leveraging it effectively across Indian use cases.
All right. Thank you very much, Srikant, for very patiently answering all the questions and giving us so many further deep insights. I must confess, every time we get a chance to listen to you, we go back more charged up, more educated, and hope that a lot of things that you are attempting to do globally, we are able to see it happening in great measure in our country too. As they say, all good things do come to a pause, but I'm sure the learning journey that we have begun with you today will continue in the minds of people, and they will try to acquire more wisdom in this area. I would like to also welcome all our panelists for the next session. Sincerely appreciate your punctuality. As they say in lighter vein, in digital, you can't say I was stuck in a traffic jam, but then off late, the latest buzz is you get caught in net traffic. But having said that, I welcome our panelists for the next session. And before we kind of officially close this session, let's have a group photograph with Srikant as a memory of this wonderful time that we spent with him, educating ourselves on various aspects related to AI and other digital applications. May I request all present to please put on your videos to enable our efficient staff in the Secretariat to capture this moment for us, though digitally. We are across 3 screens, so be a little patient so that we can capture you. In case you need a little time to get ready, then I'm afraid you'll have to wait for the next group photograph, but we are all set to go for this group photograph. All right, thank you very much, and deep sense of gratitude to Srikant on behalf of my entire team of Bombay Management Association. Thank you so much for this enthralling address that set the right tone for this concluding day of our Digital Leadership Summit. Thank you very much, and we hope to be connected with you to become wiser and wiser in this field of analytics. Thank you, Srikant, once again.
Thank you, Professor Mani. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. I take this opportunity to very, very warmly welcome Mr. Niteen Bhagwat, who is our former president of the Bombay Management Association. And in all our associations with him, he's one of those who always inspires us that digital is the way of life going ahead. Who better than he to be part of the panel as a chair to lead the discussions related to marketing. I'm also very happy to welcome our esteemed panelists, Avadhoot, Prashant, and Murli. More about them you will get to know, their wonderful achievements and their track record, while I hand over to our hostess for this evening, the core committee member of the Bombay Management Association and the organizing team of this Digital Leadership Summit. May I request Supriya Sachdeva to please take over.
Thank you very much, sir. It was indeed a very, very insightful session that Mr. Srikant gave, and he very aptly described how digital is redefining every sector, be it retail, be it beauty, be it finance. And now I think it's time to really understand how digital is disrupting marketing and helping build a smarter business by starting a marketing track. Before that, I would like to play a short video by our sponsor Shebang. So, sir, if you could please give me the access.
Go ahead.
The other one.
Okay.
Okay.
Supriya, we aren't getting the audio.
I'll just play it again, sir. Okay, so I think we are ready to start our marketing track. I would like to start with introduction of our chair, Mr. Niteen Bhagwat. He will be facilitating this session. He is an industry veteran and an advertising maverick with more than 3 decades of experience. He is the vice chairperson at the advertising firm FCB Interface, and he is the past president of Bombay Management Association. So a really a well-wisher of Bombay Management Association. Hello, sir.
Hello, Supriya. Lovely to be here.
Welcome, sir.
Good to have you here, sir. I would now introduce each speaker one by one. I'll start with Avadhoot Revenkar. He will be talking about how machine learning and AI are transforming the marketing technology space. So if I tell you his background, I'm sure you'll relate more to it, why he's the right person to talk about it. So he's the Chief Growth Officer and the business head of Netcore Solutions. He's really passionate about MarTech and personalization. And he's been associated with Netcore for more than 10 years now and has evolved from managing product marketing to customer success to chief marketing technologies. And now he's the business head. So good to have you here, Avadhoot. If you could just come on the video and say hello to our audience.
Yeah. Hi everyone. I think very happy to be here along with all the panelists.
Thank you. So our next speaker is Mr. Balamurali. He will be talking about how marketing can help India pivot to the 5 trillion economy. And he is a marketing leader, a very senior marketing leader at IBM India with over 14 years over there. And prior to that, he was the associate director with Mudra for around 9 years. I'd like to welcome Mr. Balamurali. If you could please come online and switch on your video and say hello to the audience.
Hey, hi. It's a great honor to be here with the Bombay Association here, Management Association. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you. And our third speaker is Mr. Prashant, and he is the head of marketing and strategy at Cloud Social Technologies. Before that he was the CMO and head of strategy and product at CloudPoint. He also was the national head of strategy, alliances, and subscriber marketing. So in all, he has around more than 9 years of experience in marketing and strategy, and he excels in 360-degree campaign management, entailing planning, targeting, omnichannel lead capturing, etc. So he will be speaking on the marketing paradigm shift, which covers the aspect of social media management and the influencer marketing in detail. I'd like to welcome Mr. Prashant. If you could come and say hello.
Hi, Supriya. Thanks for the introduction. And
hello,
thank you.
Hi.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be part of this esteemed jury and the panel. I look forward to this session.
Good to have you here. Thank you so much.
Same here.
And now I request Niteen sir to please take this forward.
Thank you so much, Supriya. I think, and without further ado, I think in the digital world, we need to move very, very rapidly in nanoseconds, as they say. So I will request Avadhoot to share his screen and content and tell us a little more about machine learning and artificial intelligence. I believe, Supriya, we have 15 to 20 minutes per speaker.
Yes, so we have 15 minutes for each speaker, followed by the discussion, which you'll be facilitating. And then we'll take questions from the audience. So audience, please put in your questions in the chat box and we'll take it up at the end.
Sure.
Over to you, Avadhoot.
Yeah, thanks, Niteen and Supriya. You're able to see my screen, right? That's the most common question asked on Zoom, by the way.
Done.
Yeah, perfect. Cool. So like Supriya and Niteen mentioned, we'll focus on very clearly, 5 ways in which artificial intelligence is really transforming things in the marketing and technology space. And all of it is very clearly revolving around this whole fact of creating personalized customer experiences. So everything that machine learning and AI is being impacting, keeping in mind building personalized experiences, because that's essentially what brands have been focusing on, not just for 2020, but also will continue to focus on in the next couple of years as well. And this is what we will delve into today in the next 10 to 15 odd minutes. The first thing, and we'll go order wise. First thing very clearly is knowing your customer. And I think Professor Mani mentioned about data being very critical for machine learning and AI to really show its results. I think that is one of the biggest problems brands need to see how they can sort at their end. And which is where the first point being, it's important to know know more about your customers and know it in the right way. So very simple things, right? And I'll go a little more deeper into this, but there is this whole 4M model which talks about how it's important for you to have right data being maintained, be it in your Google Tag Manager that you would have, or let's say in a data lake that you're maintaining. But I think having or basically correcting the data that you have with you is super critical, because we've worked with more than 100, 200 brands across the globe. And the biggest problem is the data is not maintained in the right fashion. So I think the first one very clearly being mending the data, merging data with your catalog information. So your product catalog and your user information should be merged with each other. That's another clear gap we see when it comes to data that's available at brand side. Monitoring data and maintaining that data, and very clearly marrying your online and offline data. These days we do see a lot of online offline brands or direct to customer brands also going online, like Vijay Sales, or let's say Big Bazaar or Shopper Stop and others. But in a lot of cases, the problem is when I purchase at the store and I buy online, I'm two different customers for them, which is not again a good thing to have, and which is the whole point on knowing who your customer is super critical, which then allows you to do a lot of things, right? Like what you see on the screen right now is just a information put together of this Ryan as a user, who's registered on 3rd of June. He's a privileged customer. He's from New York. Because you've now collated all this information, you're able to calculate his lifetime value, which is, let's say, $10,000 in this case. What's his preferred store to purchase? What are his preferred devices? What are his top activities, and other information? Having all of this together is super critical. And followed by that, what then is important is that knowing who's your best customer. And I think this is one concept which has been there for some time. It's just that it's not being followed that rigorously by brands. Is the fact that in any business, 20% of your revenues or your profits come in from 80% of your revenues or profits come in from 20% of your customers, and that's how it will always remain, and which is where it's important. I'm not saying the rest of the customers are not important, but knowing who are your best customers and doing everything to retain these best customers is super important, so that you can do all it takes, be it sending them personalized cakes on their birthdays or wishing them on their anniversaries and things like that, to make sure that you're retaining your top 20% best customers. And there are very simplified customer lifetime models which are being built for you to identify some of this, but what's more important is taking action on some of this once you know who your best or ideal customer is. And we'll talk a little bit more about how you could possibly retain some of these best customers using machine learning. Broadly, what we are saying is this is like the flywheel, right? For lifetime customer retention, that's like something ideal for every business today, where you aim at acquiring the right customer, you retain the best customers, and you maximize using referrals for the best customers. And when I say referrals, there are a lot of referral campaigns almost every brand runs, but it's as good as not there, right? They just possibly give you values of as low as 50 rupees or 100 rupees, which is one time. But if it's a best customer referring, possibly he gets the value out of it for the next 1 or 2 years, and that's how you turn the tables and give that special treatment to that identified best customer that you have, as a business, and this is the concept on which the entire next 10-12 minutes we'll focus on. The second most important thing is, and I think someone spoke about this also, there are a lot of digital footprints that the customer leaves when he's on your website, when he's browsing, and a lot of information that he leaves back. It's about how you utilize that information to make the best out of it, and which is where I think very clearly tracking all that information, and I'll talk in the context of e-commerce, since that's the simplest business model to understand. You tracking all historic information about this user named Angelina here, where she clicks on specific products, she adds products to cart, she purchases specific products, she likes some products, filters products, and so on and so forth, right? She does a lot of things when she's on your website. I think tracking all of that information is super critical. And once you track, and today, if you ask me, a lot of brands do track it, but very few of them make use out of it. And which is where you use collaborative and content filtering, which could essentially help you predict things that she's going to buy next by tracking some of this information. And the simplest of examples is Amazon, right? 33% of Amazon's revenues today come from their recommendations, which is a huge number, and the reason why they invest so much in it is because it leads to building personalized experiences, when the user is on the app or on the website or tomorrow in the store as well. And that's exactly what I'm trying to say here. By using information we have and predicting what's the next best product Angelina as a user is going to purchase, and that's essentially what these product recommendations could do for you as a brand. The same way, like it's important to know about your customers, it's also important to know about the products that you have on your website. And in this quick 25-second video, you will see how a image is something which a machine could read and give you a lot more information than what you could manually extract out of it. For example, for this product, which the image is being processed right now, it gives you informations like what's the type of product, what's the fabric of that product, is it what's the linen that's being used, is it is it floral or not, printed or not, and lot more information than what we would ideally have today on any of the websites. And which is where, again, machine learning can read these images with the right learning given to them. It can read images and then make sure that you have more information about the product. And once you have both details, you have more information about the products, you have information about the user, you can start mapping the right or best products for each individual user. So the lady standing here, there is a 47% probability that she would buy this product, and so on and so forth, which essentially means when she's on your website, don't show her anything else, just focus on these 4 products, and she will most possibly buy one of them. And that's essentially what personalized experiences are all about. And don't stop at personalizing just at at a particular page. You can do that across, right from the home page when the user comes onto your website, to the listing page, to actually creating a personalized landing page, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, on the product display page, or personalizing things even on the app or the store, for that matter, if the user is on your store, and even on communication channels. Most of us today are bombarded with so many emails, notifications, which are not relevant to us, and that's the reason we end up avoiding them. But if they talk about the right products, there is a high possibility that we would go ahead and purchase it. So personalizing that entire experience, I think, is what brands clearly need to focus on. Second thing, and I'll skim through this in the interest of time, but broadly the point is, personalize as much as possible. So let's say if Angelina as a user comes on the site, opts to search, the outcome of a search that she sees has to be again related to what she's searching. So while white t-shirts, you might have thousands of white t-shirts for women on your website. But because she's a user coming in from an iPhone, you could possibly end up showing her some high-end products. You would also show her some high-margin products, which you would want to sell to her, and also personalize the outcome by showing her products which are commonly bought by female in Singapore, which makes the outcome of that search so much relevant. And search is a very high intent kind of shown by the user for them to end up buying a particular product on your website. So again, making sure search is personalized as well when the user is searching on your website. Just a simple example there, someone searching for Halloween clothes in the US could be something like this as compared to someone doing it in India, right? It's just way different than than what it normally would be, just because of geographical differences. And that's why personalizing search or outcome basis locations is again super critical. Making your users feel special when they're on your website, which essentially is this whole concept we've seen working great with some of the e-commerce brands, is where when you're on a website, you're with some purpose, some objective that you want to achieve, right? You want to buy a t-shirt, you want to buy a face wash, or so on and so forth. Machine learning here can essentially help create a personalized page for every user, and this is what we've done for some of the brands like Hermo from Singapore, Qtro from India, and many other brands, where we've created a personalized page for every user, and we've used machine learning to actually help us identify what are the right products to show to that user on that page, and this is what it looks like, where when the user clicks on it, he sees a personal boutique. So it's like a personal website for him, where there are products which are most possibly of his interest, basis all the historic information we have about that user. And we've seen amazing results there, with more than 7% increase in revenues, 50% increase in add to carts, and so on and so forth. And we've seen these results with many brands. The same way, you can also create another very personalized experience by creating a Instagram-like view on your website, where the same personal boutique, when looked at on the phone, can actually look like Instagram. And this is what you see here right now. When you're seeing these products, a user can like, and he will see more products of those type, or he could dislike and he would see different products than what he has disliked. And if you see, the entire interface is very similar to Instagram, which is what the millennial generation is so used to, which makes it a lot more friendly for them to consume and then go ahead and purchase. So that's another thing which we've kind of seen. And again, these are personalized recommendations that the user would end up seeing. Again, things around doing in-store personalization. We've seen some brands putting up kiosk in their stores, wanting to do some things around these lines as well. This is not yet done by many brands, but there are few we are seeing getting to do in-store personalization as well. These are some other success stories where we've seen some amazing results. I'll skim through some of these slides. Just coming to the last section on predicting, and this is again where AI can really help, where predicting what your users would do next and understanding why they did a particular action, I think are two other things AI can surely help on. So just to give you a quick example, over here you will see the platform itself predicting churn, where it predicts people who are going to leave your brand. They're going to uninstall your app, or they're going to leave your website or not come back to your website again. So people who are most likely to churn, fairly likely to churn, is already being predicted. They've not left yet, which then allows you to take action and then retain them. So predicting beforehand what's really going to happen, and the same way you can predict what will they buy next. You can predict which song will they listen to today, who will open my email today, and who will see a movie tonight, and things like that. So those are things which you can easily predict using machine learning models, and then make sure you take the right action with whatever the prediction is. And the same stands true for and this is something you'll see Google Analytics doing as well, where there are platforms which actually start helping you on understanding things that are happening around your business. So for example, your overall revenue has seen a drop on 1st October. You kind of want to now know why this has happened, and which is where AI would help you and figure out why your revenues dropped on 20th April. It could be because of your daily website traffic went down, your dropouts between add to cart and checkout have increased by 13%, your push notification campaign didn't perform well, and so on and so forth. So actually machine learning helping you understand why something happened and then take corrective actions and focus on actions, then focusing on deriving the insight and understanding why that insight happened. Broadly, this is it. I think this is just a quick overview of what Netcore is all about. These are 4 products that Netcore kind of offers from an automation, app engagement, personalization, and customer data platform point of view. And the person standing in the middle is Raman, which is our AI engine. But broadly, this is it from my side. These are the 5 key points from how machine learning is really impacting marketing. Yeah. Yeah, Supriya, I think that's largely what I had from my side.
Great, nice presentation. Personalize, personalize, and personalize.
Yeah.
Because that's the message that our audience has received now. Niteen sir, over to you.
Avadhoot, thank you so much. I think it was a very practical, step-by-step approach to artificial intelligence and machine learning. I think you demystified a lot of the things, and I'm sure we have a lot of questions for you once all these speakers have shared their opinions to us. So with that, I will request our next speaker, which is Bala, to come on. Bala, can you hear us?
Yeah, hi. I can. Hi.
Yeah.
I'll just share my slide. And
Yeah.
Hi. So the topic that I took today was, I think it was important to understand what's happening in the larger picture of the 5 trillion economy in India. The lay of the land. As a marketeer, I think the first step you are taught is to look at the lay of the land and what's happening in the customer perspective, the audience perspective. I've put it across in three drivers that are actually that is come together for us in India, and that is the demographic driver, technology driver, and the reforms driver. I'll dwell upon each one of them one by one. And 2 important shifts, I think, the times that we are living in COVID-19 and the next consumer decade, and why the consumer decade next. And it's all leads to one way forward.
Oh, went down.
It all leads to one way forward. And to start with the 3 drivers, I think there are, first, it's important to understand the unique times that we live in today, especially in India. India today is the only country and economy in the world which is getting younger by the day. Okay, there are other economies that are getting older. This means that many things to many people actually. Effective 31st December 2019, we have become the world's youngest nation. This tag means a lot to a lot of us. The average Indian customer's age is about 28 years today. Statistically speaking, there are about 600 million millennials that we have in India, which is about 64% of the total country's population, which is about 600 million millennials who are younger than 20 years that we have. if you compare it with, say, any other larger economy that that country's millennial population alone, with the combined population of, say, US, UK, and Australia all put together, they will not be comparable to what we have, which is less than the 600 million population what we have. Okay. And this means our younger segment alone will outplace the combined market size of all the three large economies that you are looking at. So you need to look at this demographic change of 64% of the population, which is less than 28 years, in a different lens. What do they do? How do they actually look at brands? How are their consumption patterns that they are there? Okay. The average age of an US citizen today is about 38, China is about 39, and Japan is about 65, and we are at about 28. So it matters to look at how they look at the world differently, and other countries also, how they look at it very differently. And what makes this population very different from the others that we have is the fact that they actually have a job when they actually are graduating. They already have a job. It's not like they have to struggle a lot as they go forward in the new economy that we are looking at. There is also a higher purchasing parity because they already have a job that you're looking at, that you're looking at. And number two, you're also looking at a mindset that is actually not looking at an asset-oriented mindset that they are not looking at. They are of the generation of the Uber and Ola generation kids that are coming up. Actually, they don't have longer stint of making up assets as what we grew up as we came up with XYZ car you own after the job, and you go and look at a house, or you look at XYZ milestones of assets that you want to have with marriage, XYZ things. They are XYZ set of things don't matter to them. Assets don't matter to them. The third one is the most important one is they're the most outspoken, and they give feedback to every experience that they go through. Okay. And for them, the benchmark is the last experience that they have had. And remember, this is the generation of kids who have actually grown up over the last 10 years with say Amazon and Flipkart as the home screens that they have grown up with. And the best experience that they are looking at is the last experience that they have had, a non-stop experience of delivery. That is the benchmark for any other consumption that they actually make as they look at it. So that was about the first demographic driver of the youngest nation of 600 millennials that we are looking at. The second one is a technology driver. I think my previous speaker also talked about how predictable you can become about fashion or any other part of looking at predicting things with machine learning enabled by AI. We have entered in platform economy. We are in the platform economy where it is extremely critical to understand what is actually stemming this second driver of technology. I think we as a nation will become data rich first than becoming economically rich, because the tariff rates, we have the fabulous infrastructure of the telecom infrastructure that we started vis-a-vis the other Western counterparts. Like we straight away went into 3G, 4G, and we didn't go through the entire proliferation of the life cycle of the telecom infrastructure. And thanks to that, and thanks to mobile data, which is the most cheapest one that we have, and the consumption of that data, which is almost on par with US that we have, I think this richness of data is what is changing the entire thinking of the Indian business models are all evolving with data as the centerpiece for anything and anything that you're driving. The 30-40 years of any enterprise data that you have today is actually the gold mine of what is a gold mine, and also the basic infrastructure of how you are going to build your next AI and your next differentiation will stem out of those data-driven gold mine that you have actually been having. So that is the technology driver, and the last part of it is, I think, the MS Word as a platform, which Microsoft started, or a Facebook to the Facebook. It took close to about 15 years to actually become more than 1 billion people to become to have the platform usage of the platform. But India, in a matter of 7 to 8 years with UPI and Aadhaar as platforms, I think we have already crossed 1 billion of that platform. And with new platforms, what the government is coming out with keeping data as the core for everything, I think it is going to much more proliferate across all the segments that we are looking at. The third one is the reforms driver. Without getting into any pros and cons of anything of this, I think the government is questioning the status quo, and I think it is changing the status quo to a very large extent. And that's the great news for any business to proliferate. So these are the three drivers, I would say, that is happening in the lay of the land. And that is the extremely important part. The shifts that we are seeing is COVID-19 is a fabulous opportunity from a marketeer's perspective that has happened, or a business perspective that you would say. The flip side of the health scare and the pandemic scare that we are having is one part of the coin. The other part of it is that it's a great opportunity to go and recalibrate your business to the changing times and to the changing customer and consumer mindset, which is typically right now customized, segmented between essentials and non-essentials. That is actually, it is being looked at into. And how do you actually recalibrate the business, and how do you look at going and making the best of the 6 feet economy of the COVID-19 is what I would say is actually proliferating and moving it across. And what we are also seeing is the second shift that's happening is the consumer decade is actually coming in with 600 million millennials that you're having, plus you're also having the consumption mindset with data-driven mindset that is coming in. The consumption economy is set to grow. The case in example is, for example, Reliance Retail, which can be in the top, say 5, say retailers across the globe. The way it is going and consolidating, and the way it is going across and driving the entire business scenario in India in the retail landscape. It is reshaping the retail landscape itself. How do you actually look at that as we will be in the top 3 or top 5 in the next 5 to 10 years. And therefore, the consumption economy is going to boom, is just set to boom in this country, reaching us to the 5 trillion mark. And as we are seeing is that this is going to become the most important thing, and there's only one way forward. It's all about experience. Remember that it's all about the last experience is your benchmark of what you have had in the technology-driven, consumption platform-driven economy that we are heading to. It's all about experience, and that's the way forward that you will have. As a marketeer, you must strive hard to have the best experience, and as a marketeer of worth your salt, your last idea is actually as good as what you are as a marketeer, and that's what is going to make or break that experience chain as you go forward. And that was my point of view of the entire transformation and the lay of the land about how things are transforming for us to reap the 5 trillion economy. Over to you, Niteen.
Thank you so much, Bala. I think, and it shows that you are from the advertising industry also, that you could pack everything into a single slide. Yeah, I think the 3 + 2 + 1 formula is very, very succinct. It captures all the nuances. and the entire landscape, so to speak. I have many questions for you, but the one point that I want to leave behind and it struck a chord is a lot of companies that I know and work with, they are now beginning to appoint chief experience officers like CEOs. Okay, so I think you have touched on something which is going to be the trend going forward. And with that, may I welcome our third speaker, Prashant. And Bala, if you can stop sharing the screen so that Prashant can. Prashant, can you hear us? Supriya is Prashant.
Sorry.
Prashant.
Yeah, my mic was not getting unmuted. Thanks, sir. Thanks for the introduction. So I'll quickly begin. Let me share my screen.
Yeah.
Supriya, can you allow me to share the screen?
And Prashant, I think there's a lot of light coming from behind you.
Yeah. Just
so I think we are getting a nice halo around you.
Go ahead, Prashant. It's enabled.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll be talking about the marketing paradigm shift. So how the businesses and everything is are preferring the more new age form of marketing rather than the traditional marketing, which is on a diminishing side right now. So the story began after the internet was introduced, maybe a decade back or more than a decade back. There was a massive change in marketing. So businesses are no longer using the traditional way to market their products or services. Rather, they were shifting to the newer form of marketing, that is digital marketing, social media marketing, and other forms. Small businesses saw value in it, as the initial investment was less. You can quickly get onto any social media platform and quickly market your products, and you tend to immediately start generating leads and market your products and services. So the ROI was much higher than in the other form of marketing. So this is catching up, and moving on, we'll maybe see some businesses doing it the digital form in the much better, much higher budget for the digital form rather than the traditional form, and this is bound to happen. So the another aspect is the influencers. So influencers bring a lot of credibility. Influencers are those who have a fan base, who have followers, and who tend to communicate with them, engage with them on social media platform. So they bring a lot of credibility. So brands also trust them, and they give the content a fighting chance to go viral and reach the fans. The advantage of using influencer marketing is that it is truly social in nature. So the content and the product or the service is not being pushed at the audience. Rather, it is being communicated in a very subtle way. So take an example: if someone starts a page or branded page on Facebook, initially the reach is completely zero. There is no reach at all. But suppose an influencer shares that page or likes a particular content on that page, then his or her fan base can reach out, can view the content, and the reach gets multiplied. And this can be done to all the social media platforms that are currently available. So word of mouth is like the holy grail of marketing for every brand. If a consumer endorses it and that the consumer is actually an influencer, the credibility of that endorsement is way higher. So let's have a look at the social media universe. So these are some of the top 6 social media platforms everyone knows about. So in little more than a decade, they have gone from being just an entertainment platform for communicating or interacting to being something part of nearly every aspect of our daily life. So today, Facebook is one of the most valuable companies and at the center of everything what a user does. So that's why we see them in a lot of public policy debates, because they are impacting the audience opinions and influencing them in every way. So let's look at some of the statistics. So 70% of the millennials will say that they will trust influencers more than the traditional celebrities. So 4 in 10 millennials subscribers say their favorite influencers understand them much better than their friends. So this is the connect that a millennial has with the influencer. And so brands don't waste resources promoting themselves and instead use influencers to speak on their behalf and deliver the message they want people to garner their trust. So 86% of women say that social media, they use the social media for purchasing advice. So this statistics comes from the this thing that it seems if you want to reach out to more women and get them to buy your product, a brand product, then they would have to present them in such a way that the women audiences read the reviews, comments, messages from their peers, and then make the purchase decision. So 49% of consumers depend on influencer recommendations. So the favorite influencer that they're following, they tend to look at his recommendations. So one of the recent example is the Baba Ka Dhaba instance, wherein a YouTuber made a video and there was a big queue outside the dhaba to try out the delicacies that he was making. So people follow influencers, and even if there is no need, they just want to try what the influencer is saying. So, and then the next one is that sometimes it depends on the platform also. Say for example, what product you are selling and to whom you are selling, where your target audience is. If it is a B2B product, you will prefer LinkedIn. If it is maybe an e-commerce product, you will prefer the Facebook or Instagram. So similar to that, a Twitter influencer can increase the purchase intent by about 5.2 times. That is the stat says. So nowadays, 67% of marketeers are using influencer to promote their content. That is the latest trend. And as we all know, Facebook is the most influential social media network. So let's look at some of the case studies that are there. So the first one is from Tata Mutual Funds. So there was a campaign, that No Katoti campaign, wherein they wanted to reach out to their prospects and communicate that with mutual funds also the taxes can be saved. So they want to bust the myth. That was the objective of this campaign. So they created a couple of videos and promoted across YouTube, Facebook, Instagram platform. And the results were phenomenal. They had 94 lakh impressions, 51 lakh interactions, and 7,700 leads. Let's have a look at one of the video. So that was about Tata Mutual Fund. So the campaign was very vastly successful, and they could reach out to the target audiences and could generate about 10,000 leads for for their product. The next campaign that we would like to look at is the Khata book. So they want to increase the app installs, and what was done was the usually uh, only English or Hindi languages were being used. So this campaign was done in 10 vernacular languages. So even the South languages were used, wherein the audiences were reached at their preferred medium in their preferred language with the clear communication, and which helped them to be listed among the top 50 most downloaded apps on Play Store. So this was a short campaign, but yielded a lot of results. Let's have a look at the impact it had.
Prashant, we can't hear the audio.
Sorry, you can't hear the audio?
No.
Is it audible now?
Slightly. Maybe you could increase the volume.
Sorry?
If you could please increase the volume.
So these were the social media campaigns. Then Cafe Coffee Day did an influencer marketing campaign, wherein they had launched some 3 new drinks during the winter, and they wanted to reach out to the target audience, and they wanted to communicate about it. So a campaign was planned wherein about 51 influencers were used for about 2 days, and 171 posts were created by those 51 influencers. And they used a unique thing wherein one influencer tagged another influencer. So this was a social chain across 3 channels, that is Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And it had phenomenal result wherein 6.2 million impressions, 2.6 million reach, and 10,000 engagement was the impact of this campaign. Winter has arrived at Cafe Coffee Day.
Prashant, we're still having problem. We can't listen to the audio.
Audio is not audible?
No, no.
Is it audible now?
Slightly.
In each post, the influencer posted a picture of themselves with a thought bubble expressing their wintry thoughts. Each influencer experienced all 4 beverages and tagged the next influencer, encouraging them to catch the chill at Cafe Coffee Day. This increased the virality and engagement of the campaign. It created a first of its kind social chain across 3 channels. In just 2 days, 51 influencers with a following of over 1.4 million achieved a reach of 2.6 million and an impression of 6.2 million with an engagement close to 10,000. Want the right thing? Winter has.
The last one is about the Samsung. So Samsung had launched some trendy accessories, and they wanted to reach out to a target audience of fashion professionals. So they created a campaign wherein they engaged with 3 top influencers, and they promoted the accessories in their way to their fan base, and which had a reach about more than 5.5 lakh and 1.7 lakh engagement. So the marketing evolution from traditional fort, that is the press, out of home, radio, and television, to digital and to influencer has begun, and it is happening in big way. So maybe in future we'll see some newer and innovative ways of marketing, like meme marketing is already catching up, and it is being very popular amongst the millennials. Uh, as rightly said by Avadhoot, so contextual data-driven marketing is the key. So you have to reach out to your consumer at the right time with the right message to the right channel, and you will definitely grab his attention, and then you can change his intent. So ultimately, to sum it up, consumer is the winner because the brand is changing to adapt to consumers' demands and to his preferences and to personalize the offering. So consumer is always the winner. So with this, I would like to conclude my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prashant. I think it was
Thank you.
a wonderful presentation, and I think there's some brilliant case studies. I think technology always comes in the way when you want to make a presentation, and either the slides go off or the sound goes, right? So I think we have another half an hour. I know there are a lot of audience questions also, but a few questions to our panelists and to our speakers. I think the first question that I want to ask is at a more macro level. Bala talked about that India is going to be very data rich. So I've got two questions. One is, I hear a lot of marketeers say that actually there is very little of real data, especially if you're a mid-sized company. So how do you respond to that? And the second linked question is, a lot of articles which talk about Aadhaar and UPI and the Aadhaar data stack as going to becoming revolutionary in terms of how it transforms the data environment in India. So over to you, Bala and Avadhoot and Prashant.
I think data is the basis. If it is a larger enterprise, the 30 to 40 years of data, if you take, for example, if you take one of my customers, that is Tata Steel, I think invested pre-COVID, at least about 4 to 5 years behind. They started investing upon the entire to become a digital enterprise. When they make the digital enterprise, it starts with the data platform and with all the mining of data, what you have. And similar to what you look at, Nitin, in your day job of coming out with insights, and to make those informed decisions of insights that is available to them at every given point of time. They started this transformation pre-COVID, and it was a seamless movement for most of the enterprises pre-COVID when they had invested in a lot of digital transformation, starting with data platforms that they had already invested in. So they didn't have too much of repercussions in during COVID period, and they could switch on and switch off their systems with technology as they went forward. And data is comes with how you look at it and how you want to mine it and how you want to use it and the importance that you give as you come down the ladder, possibly with customers down the bottom of the pyramid might not have had the resources earlier, but with the proliferation of cloud as a platform that has come, it's become extremely cheaper, and everything that you can do with ready to eat, platforms that you have of Amazon or any other platform that you have, it's extremely easy to actually go and manage your data right now across any enterprise, any size, and you can scale up and scale down. And there are so many tools, open technology, free tools that are there in the market. It's actually how you want to go about it, possibly with a little bit of consultation that it can be, it can happen. And the second part of the question about Aadhaar actually going to revolutionize the entire data. Yes, there are vendors down the alley within Bombay itself who have been tracking, who have merged Aadhaar along with your consumption data of your bank account details, which is where you get the ting of the SMS. There are people who have mapped across this consumption-based data that you have, along with the Aadhaar and the electoral data. And at the press of a button, you can go and enrich your database, what you have. At the click of a button, you are able to do it today in India. What it used to take about 7 to 8 years to build your database, you can do that possibly in six months to a year. You can enrich your database, what you have, and call it actually a database beyond the list what you have. Yes, it is on the verge of revolutionizing how we operate and how we look at things. And a lot of leading consumer brands based out of Bombay have already started enriching their databases there.
Wow, thank you. Thank you so much. And Avadhoot, would you like to add something to what Bala was saying?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Bala covered some really important points there. One, very clearly, so India as an economy already that way is data rich to a great extent. It being mobile first economy, right? Almost every individual is connected to digital as an entity, and it becomes a lot more easier to connect to digital when it's a mobile first economy, because it's just about spending about 5,000 or 10,000 rupees, and you're connected to the digital world. So I think that clearly is already happening. Secondly, I think even while it's still in the blooming stage, but I think Internet of Things is also transforming a lot of things in a very different way. So for example, there are a few brands we've spent some time with where there are these coal mining trucks, which used to, take 1,000 kgs of coal from one place to another. And there used to be some smuggling that used to happen of about 100 kgs going missing in between. And because of IoT, we've been able to figure out that, okay, these trucks don't stop at a particular place for more than X amount of time, which then has led to some of that getting stopped, which is again making sure you're tracking data and taking corrective actions. So I think data rich, we are already data rich. I think brands are just figuring out different ways to make use out of it. And Aadhaar, I think, is very clearly a great example of it, right? At one point, government did say you have to be, there has to be a bank account, or let's say a broking firm should have Aadhaar verified customers, because they'd taken our mobile numbers, mapped our mobile numbers to Aadhaar, had our fingerprints there. It was a lot more easier for brands to get that done than what it would have been without some of that happening. And Aadhaar clearly has a lot of problems which it has to fix, right? Like today, one very evident problem is there is no unified system for managing jobs across different companies. There are so many candidates who would take in 5 offers and join just one place, as compared to someone who's working at a particular place and applies at 10 different places and plays around, right? But there is no central system. Aadhaar is the system where this solution could essentially be solved. US already solves this with the citizen ID that they have, and which makes it a lot more transparent. So I think it's about I think some of these things getting to use as we progress.
So I think linked to this question and talked about citizens ID and all the issues. When you talk about data and digital marketing in the area of and digital marketing of MarTech,
right?
In Europe, we have GDPR. The US is going to have something from California. Correct. And the Indian laws are supposed to be as strict as GDPR, maybe more so.
Correct.
How will that impact digital marketing and data marketing once these laws actually come in and privacy becomes a real issue?
Right. So, and that's a great question. In fact, most of the brands we deal with today in India as well end up asking, are you GDPR compliant? While it does not apply so much here, but I think they're already becoming sensitive towards, data privacy as a problem. And I think it's going to evolve. Is going to have its own evolution. It's going to have bigger impacts on the biggies like Facebook and Google, who've been paying fines in $1 million over the last X number of years, especially because of GDPR. But I think it has a bigger impact, and Prashant can maybe add some value on the AdTech part of the world, which is the acquisition part of the world. As compared to the existing customer engagement part of the world, but it does have impact. It's just that there are always ways to play around some of these rules that come out. So today you will see every website asks you, do you want this website to track you? And the accept option is highlighted. The no option is very difficult to find, and we as consumers are always in a hurry, so we just say accept, take it, do whatever you want with me. So there are always these gaps which are there, which brands come up with, and GDPR says that, right? You have to get acceptance from the user if you want to track him, and you see that today on almost every website. But I think the law being there is super critical, and I think it's already in the works. And it will impact the acquisition business in a great way. Because and already there are browsers like Chrome and others who started implementing some policies, right? You can't track third-party cookies and things like that have already started coming in as policies from the ones who've been doing this for many years.
Super, Avadhoot. And Prashant, I think Avadhoot raised the question from an ad tech point of view and an acquisition point of view.
Yeah.
So how is this data privacy going to impact all of us?
So it will have a great impact.
Marketeers.
It will have a great impact because what is happening is, just take an example of the mobile phone which you have with you, So whenever you install any app, it takes n number of permissions. It wants access to your camera, it wants access to your microphone, everything, SMS. So tomorrow your salary is getting credited. That app knows that your salary is credited, and some of them are using it to target. So sometimes maybe you don't notice it or you don't come to know that, but once your salary is credited, an offer comes that 70% off. Grab this, shop this. So the brands are using this data, whatever permissions they are taking, and at some extent there is an abuse also. So we read all sort of articles wherein Truecaller data is stolen, this data has gone. So this particular law is definitely should be on the cards, and we should expect it sooner than rather than later. And once it streamlines, then maybe a better consumer experience can be given, and more security is also there and privacy is there.
Right. So Prashant, shifting from the science part and the data part to something that you talked about, and you talked about influencer marketing.
Yeah.
What are the big trends in influencer marketing? What has changed in influencer marketing over the past 2 years, 1 year?
So what is happening is, initially the influencers were someone who who had credibility or something. But nowadays, what is happening is, if you post some catchy content and people like it and they follow you, then that person becomes an influencer. And once you have some million followers or 2 million followers or 3 million followers, then brands approach that particular influencer, and then he's seen as a is seen as a brand influencer who can promote their products certainly to his fan base. So that is the change that is happening. A normal maybe person is also capable of becoming an influencer. So we just saw a couple of examples wherein there are a lot of TikTok influencers with few million followers, and they were competing with the well-known celebrities also. They had more followers than well-known celebrities. So that is the change that is happening. So people are not only following those who are in the limelight like celebrities or politicians, but they're also following normal people who give you engaging content to them. That content is consumable. That is the change that is happening.
Yeah. Also, I think just to add, recently we did a very interesting campaign with Rahul Subramaniam, who's a stand-up comedian. Which was again is something that we have seen happen commonly these days. That comedians are getting involved because people are so used to their acceptance is higher when it's humorous, and I think that's one of the things also we are seeing catching up.
And Avadhoot, a flashback question for you. Netcore at a point of time was the king of SMSs.
Right.
Is SMS still alive or is it dead?
And that's
as a marketing tool.
Right. And in fact, that's a very good question. And if you ask me, relevant and right SMSs are still alive. In fact, they still get a lot of, there are a lot of brands who get a lot of clicks and responses from SMS campaigns, and as compared to any other channel today. Even though SMS today has become costlier, right? There is TRAI is saying you have to pay me 5-8 paisa and 10 paisa, 12 paisa, and so on, as compared to 1 paisa back then 10 years back. I think even then, the brands continue to send those volumes out. So I think that's clearly because of the returns the channel has. Of course, it's lesser than what it was before because of the number of messages being sent out. But I think if you send out the right messages, right? So for example, we do these interesting campaigns for HDFC Life and some of these other brands where I'm sending out very relevant contextual messages. So when it's time for renewal is when I will trigger that message. Or when I think it's his birthday or anniversary, I will wish him, greet him, and give him some gift as a voucher so that he remembers me as a brand. So I think those messages would always remain relevant, even though whichever channel you use to communicate. So I think
super.
Yeah.
So before I hand over to Supriya, one last question, and before we start taking audience questions, one last question to Bala. We keep on reading that all the IT companies, whether it is TCS or IBM or the Accentures of the world or the Tech Mahindras, Capgeminis, are all becoming digital marketing companies. So what do you see as the future? Are IT companies going to take over digital marketing fully? Can you do crystal ball gazing for us? Bala, you're on mute.
He might not be able to unmute. I think Professor Mani might have.
Yeah. I think that's a great question. I would say coming in from marketing and advertising. what I have seen, without not naming all the large, we have seen the proliferation of so many digital agencies, small boutique agencies to large IT companies who are actually having digital service. Till about 2 years back, IBM was the number one digital agency in the world. Till 2 years back, it's Accenture right now. Okay,
Right.
They are running it like typical BPO houses. They are running it like with augmentation of AI and lot of technology and tools that are available. They are running it like a factory. They are running it like a BPO with XYZ processes that are there, and at the switch of a button, you will actually get across a creative actually which looks at the category and insight and competitors in the background, and you automatically get a headline for a specific market, specific audience. It's already proliferated, and an agency like digital agency, what they call the interactive experience divisions of these large IT companies, they're already doing it. Okay. One thing that is missing core, which I think is you will appreciate, is the fact that a marketeer has to have ideas. Ideas is what actually differentiates and things. There is a lot of debate and discussions happening between traditional agencies, advertising agencies, and this. I don't think so. The thinking of an agency that a technology company can ever have. Accenture is using it, or an IBM is using it as part of a larger digital transformation story, and they are augmenting it. We also do XYZ communication services as part of a larger transformation deal that they are putting it across and selling it as part of a larger transformation deal and looking at it as one more process to accomplish. But they are forgetting that marketing and advertising play the most important role of steering the business for adding the equity and also the next set of growth and audience that you need to get. That is where I think that is the biggest difference that is going to come. My view is that any agency or any marketer worth his salt who believes that ideas is what actually takes it, and that is what is going to keep us moving as a differentiators from any marketeer or any agency or any other digital company who just brings technology and processes. That's not going to hold us on the long run. They are all
very well put, Bala.
enablers. Yeah.
Very well put, Bala. Thank you so very much. Thank you, Bala. Thank you, Avadhoot. Thank you, Prashant. And over to Supriya. I think we have some very interesting audience questions.
A very, very interesting discussion indeed. I think, Niteen sir, the kind of questions you asked, it really led to a very insightful discussion from different perspective. There are some questions indeed. One is for Avadhoot, that if you could share some case study for personalization in healthcare.
Yeah, so there are different ways in which this could happen for different industries. Of course, healthcare does not go very hand in hand with recommended products, because if you want to buy a kerosene, you want to buy a kerosene, right? I can't tell you buy something else. So I think with that said and done, there are few aspects which there are a lot of brands like Pharmeasy and others who are already kind of practicing, where when I'm consuming the app and when I have to buy some of these things online, in the first time I have to upload a prescription and give doctor's prescription and things like that. But the experience after I've done that is as easy as doing 2 or 3 clicks when I want to reorder, or making that reorder that easier is itself personalizing to a great extent. And I think Pharmeasy is a great example of that, where I just need to do 2 clicks and I can reorder a medicine without much hassle. So I think that's possibly one closest example I could think of, specifically in the healthcare as a segment.
Okay, great. And one more question, like how the adoption of AI for personalization is. So we know that is the need of the hour. Many brands are doing it as well, but still there are some challenges which are really stopping many brands to really take up that journey. And we know it will really have a very good impact on the business as well. So what do you think are the main barriers or challenges that typically companies face in getting onto that mode?
So I think, and maybe I briefly brought this up in my slide as well, where data today is the biggest challenge. And we've come across a lot of brands where the data at the customer end is itself not structured in the right way, which makes it a lot difficult for them to use some of these machine learning models. Very simple things, right? Like the kind of products that they have, they're not categorized in the right way. Because when they start off, they're starting off in a rush, and that's how it's been there from the time they started off.
In fact, that itself is a huge challenge. Every department has a different, they have data in different formats.
Correct.
And how do you consolidate that?
Correct. And exactly right, where everything is scattered at different places, which makes it very difficult for a particular platform to then deliver results. And I think if that and if you ask me, even Gartner, which is a renowned body, released a report where for brands to take or take the maximum benefit out of machine learning and AI, data is going to be the biggest enemy to it. Where the data is not getting maintained rightly at their end. If that happens, and there are solutions which are coming out around it, like there's this whole customer data platform as a solution, which actually helps brand consolidate data and then also correct and massage a lot of data so that there is right data maintained in that structure. And then anyone can use it. The marketing team can use it, the finance can use it, the CIO, the CEO, and anyone for that matter can consume data from there. So there are solutions coming out around that to solve this data problem.
Okay, thank you. There's another question. It's from the students' perspective, like especially management students who are getting into retail management. So it's open to all the three speakers. So what kind of skill sets are employers looking for in digital retail landscape? So I open it for all the speakers.
In case anyone wants to take it up, or I can. Okay.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, Bala, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I think digital retail landscape has opened up a lot of options for in a market like India. I think right from like what we touched across interactive experiences, agencies that large IT companies themselves have, to boutique shops of what you have, who are service providers to a lot of large retail outlets itself across the globe. You have all the product innovations for right from Target. It's all happening in India. Right, it's all happening in India today. Target's entire operating model is that one fine day they switched off their switch in US and said that their entire product innovation happens from India, and operations also is all managed out from India. It is true for most of the other automotive players also, right from a Mercedes-Benz to Ford to everyone have their captive centers in India. So you have a lot of options that have proliferated over the last 4 to 5 years. And one segment is based on where you are interested. You could actually go and choose in the entire product life cycle of the retail industry, which one you want to get involved and span your career. That is one part of it. The second part of it is if you're looking at strictly a marketing and management side of the business that you are looking at. Yes, you do have a lot of big retail guys who are specifically training them on not just on soft skills, but also on the customer part of the journey, and a lot of investments are happening. And mostly I would say a lot of, if you take Mr. Mr. Nagesh in Shopper Stop is investing a lot on analytical type of skills mindset that he is looking at as you go forward and look at becoming much more in the hierarchy that you want to grow. I think analytical skills is going to be extremely hot in that space. Apart from general management, is an added one. Yeah.
And I completely kind of second Bala on that. I think business intelligence, BI, and analytics is something that that the primes are just focusing a lot more on. Specifically in the retail segment, because that just helps them understand their customers a lot better. And I think that is clearly a critical skill. But I'll still put this this way, maybe a little philosophical, but attitude still remains the most important skill set. I think most of the other things could still follow. But I think that still remains the most important skill set, at least employers look at while they're hiring.
Great. We do have other questions, but looking at the paucity of time, I think we have to let them go. As we always say, when the quality of sessions or the presentation is good, sometimes we need to have more than just 15 or 20 minutes of discussion, and we probably need one full day for that. Probably in future we can organize something like it. Now, I think it was really a very fruitful discussion. Thank you very much to all the speakers for sharing their perspective and also the way the role of marketing has been highlighted for making a smarter business. I think from every angle, it has been really very well attended. Thank you so much. And I would like to invite Professor Mani.
Thanks, Supriya, for anchoring this entire session so effectively. And a special mention of Mr. Niteen Bhagwat on the wonderful discussion that you could initiate after the excellent presentations. Supriya was right in saying that we actually needed an hour more with all of you. But as it happens in seminar planning, we always ensure that there is one extra speaker, and a special gratitude to you that none of you dropped out. And therefore we had more speakers and less time. But since we sincerely appreciate the effort you put in, and of course, Saturday evening is a difficult time for everybody to stay tuned to a Zoom screen. But hats off to all of you for really getting the audience engaged, high degree of participation, and excellent questions. On behalf of the entire team of Bombay Management Association, including so many of our past presidents who are here in this learning zone, as we call it, thank you, each one of you, Avadhoot, Prashant, Balamurali, for your wonderful wisdom and the ability to tackle the questions in such a lucid manner. We'll hope to be in touch with you and continue to engage in this learning journey. Once again, thanks to Mr. Bhagwat for anchoring this session for us and continuing to inspire us at our BMA activities. Thank you very much, everybody. And with this, we officially close this marketing track. I'm delighted to share, as I did a little earlier also, that thanks to digital, punctuality has improved. So we already have the chairperson of the next session and the two distinguished speakers with us. My privilege to welcome Mr. Suresh Mhatre, ex-TCS, and of course, another past president of the Bombay Management Association, along with a speaker from Switzerland, Professor Pieter Perrett, and of course, from Amchi, Mumbai, the Managing Director of Bombay Stock Exchange Institute, Mr. Ambarish Datta. Welcome each one of you on behalf of BMA. And may I request Supriya to continue to take over and run the next session also, that is the finance track. A logical 2 to 3 minute bio break is available to you as and when you wish. A chai break too, but we will continue. Thank you, everybody, and good evening to all our distinguished panelists. We hope you can stay on with us till the rest of the evening. Over to you, Supriya, again.
Thank you very much, sir. I'll just use this break, a short break, to run our DLS video just for new participants who have joined us. You'll have to give me a minute.
Sorry.
Am I audible?
Go ahead.
Okay. So that was just a quick reintroduction of Digital Leadership Summit for our new audience who has joined us for the finance track. And we do have our chair. We have Mr. Suresh Mhatre with us, who will be chairing this session, the finance track. And we do have our two speakers as well, Mr. Ambarish Datta and Professor Pieter Perrett. I'll start with introduction of Mr. Suresh Mhatre. He has over 3 decades of consulting and managerial experience and over 37 years of journey with TCS. He held various key positions, including Global Head of Resourcing and Head of Management Consulting. He has experience spanning a wide variety of industries like manufacturing, construction, utilities, ports, and IT outsourcing, BPO. And his specialities are IT strategy, e-governance, project delivery and management, HR sourcing, and ERP selection. Mr. Mhatre is also a former president of Bombay Management Association, and we are really happy to have him here today with us to chair this session. Hello, sir. Could you please switch on the video and say hello to our audience?
I'm on. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Namaskar.
Namaskar.
Great. So let me introduce our first speaker, who will be talking about the fintech funding in the startup ecosystem in India. His name is Ambarish Datta, and I think his profile says it all why he's a befitting person to talk about the fintech funding startup. He's the founder, managing director, and CEO of BSE Institute Ltd. It's a 100% owned subsidiary of BSE Ltd. He's also the founder and member of the board of directors of BFSI Sector Skill Council of India. He's the founder of the BIL Recent Start Accelerator, which is the world's first startup accelerator housed within a stock exchange with Ryerson University, Canada. He has over 27 years of experience, and in the past, he has also headed the technology-aided learning group at Reliance Retail Limited. His professional engagement, which is worth mentioning, I feel, is that he was elected chairman of Asia Pacific of the World Federation of Exchanges Global Committee on Financial Education and Literacy. And he's also the member of CII and National Skills Committee. I welcome you, Mr. Ambarish Datta. Thank you so much for agreeing to be the speaker for the session today. If you could please say hello to our audience.
Yeah, thank you, Supriya, and hello to everyone. Pleasure to be a part of this forum today. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And I have the pleasure of introducing our next speaker, Professor Pieter Perrett. He will be giving a brief overview of the Swiss Finch ecosystem and the synergies between the fintech models of India and Switzerland. Professor Pieter Perrett, he lectures in the international business in Asia, communication, leadership, and Project Management at the School of Business at the University of Applied Sciences, Northwestern, Switzerland. Among many projects which he has led and worked on in the past, the ones I think worth noting are, he led the key international projects for the Swiss Federal Department of Economics and the European Union, and the research project of the business model innovation. And another project I think I should mention is the International Knowledge Transfer Study for the European Commission, which provided input to the European policy decisions. He's recently completed an international research project focusing on the success factors of the social innovation hubs. And he's also active in lecturing in executive programs in Asia. Also worth mentioning is the university flagship Focus India business project, which he's supervising. And this project has been successfully running for 16 successive years, which is, I think, a great thing. He has strong interest in innovative business models and the fintech ecosystem, both in Switzerland. And Professor Perrett, if you could please say hello to our audience.
Good afternoon from Switzerland and good evening to you all in India. Welcome to you all, and thank you very much for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here.
Thank you,
And
sir. Yeah.
in Switzerland, it's just after 2 p.m., so the sun is still shining outside.
Nice. So thank you so much for joining. And now I'll hand over to the chair of the session, which is Mr. Suresh Mhatre. So over to you.
Thank you, Supriya. You're doing a fabulous job anchoring this at the back end. I know it's tough work, so it's going on so smoothly thanks to the back end team of BMA. I just want to, in my own words, sort of define the scope of the financial track of the Digital Leadership Summit. So financial fintech is something that not many people have been exposed to. It's about 3 to 5 years old, but very broadly, it means all products, processes, and business models which are technology-based in the area of financial service. It's something new. It's using technology, products and services and processes to create some new business models and provide a whole new set of services. It goes across all segments of financial services industry. So, investments, there is insurance, there's banking services, financial services like trading, management. It's a whole gamut that it covers. Also, it's not one technology. It spans multiple technologies as far as IT is concerned. So you'll have artificial intelligence, and a specific example of that would be bots. So when you ask a question of a website, you don't know whether it's a real human being at the other end or it's an intelligent software which is analyzing your frequently asked questions and responding, which is bots. There's a lot of big data analytics and pattern recognition, which is now helping analysts understand the customer segments better. There is the robotic process automation. So anything which is repetitive in nature, scanning and recognizing invoices and sorting them. And if you're looking at something like BSE, as Mr. Datta will tell you, there are millions of transactions per day. All this using robotic process automation at the back end is being done by, again, the fintech, a part of fintech technology. And last, of course, is blockchain, which sort of allows third party to trust each other without actually having met, a role which hitherto banks would play. And so blockchain has become a very integral part of the overall fintech technology services. One more area that I think is now become a part of fintech is cybersecurity. Because when you're talking of technology and you're talking of a lot of money, billions of dollars passing through technology, financial systems, obviously that attracts a lot of unwanted attention. And therefore, cybersecurity is become another integral part and a like service and has got a flip because of fintech. Having said that, we've got two great speakers and I don't want to stand in their way and the knowledge that they will share with us. It's over to you, Mr. Datta.
Right, sir. Thank you very much. Supriya, should I bring up my presentation now?
Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Mhatre, and thank you to the entire Bombay Management Association and Professor Mani to have given me this opportunity to come and join all of you. I think it's been a fantastic conference, and I think the entire track on digital and funding couldn't have been more appropriate a day after WhatsApp has been allowed to do financial transactions in India. Talk about timing, and I think we are right on here. So a pleasure, and I have a few slides, but I'll try and concise this so that we have more time to chat and exchange and ask questions and make it more interactive. So I primarily run the education subsidiary of Bombay Stock Exchange, and I focus on three broad things. The first is skills. We work directly with states. We also have a separate subsidiary which works with the government on skill development. Second is education. We train about 10,000 students. Third is our startup accelerator. We run two accelerators, one in Bombay and another at BHU. The last 5 years, we've incubated close to about 400 odd startups and raised about $45 odd million for them. The BRT SIF is a not-for-profit foundation which runs this accelerator. And for some of you who might be very curious to know the acronym, this stands for BSE Ryerson Technology Startup Incubator Foundation. For all the ease of business which we talk about, when we attempted to register our incubator, every name, every combination we would apply for would get rejected. And out of sheer frustration, I actually added all the names and submitted, and it actually got approved. And we probably have to now live with this particular name called BRTSIF. So where are we basically on the Indian startup ecosystem? I think the fact is that we are now the largest startup ecosystem in the world, about close to 78,000 startups in different stages, more than 250 incubators, and also, of course, more than 100 odd funds, plus worldwide, local, along with angels who are probably investing. The entire entrepreneurship journey, like all of us know, have gone through different stages. I call this the fourth to the fifth stage. A very large part of our stage was till 94, which was more license driven. The second phase came when the dot-com boom happened, internet happened. The third, of course, was late to 2000. And then, of course, 2012 onwards, 2015, we had a startup policy. We're seeing the new wave around this. Global startup, of course, has interesting stuff, but in India, we already now have about 9 startups last year who have turned unicorns. We have almost like another 14 which are in the queue. Fintech, incidentally, has raised the highest amount, and not surprisingly, why? The first year of the new decade was obviously going to focus on a lot of things, but this COVID has been a game changer. It has completely changed the entire focus and has realigned to what we are doing. Our total fundraising in the first half has actually dropped, and it's much lesser than what on a year-on-year basis. And the investor focus rightly have moved away from helping new investment to actually helping their portfolios do more firefighting, reducing burn rate, stopping probably throwing money tussle between valuation and running the operations. Every company takes a different trajectory. Some chase valuation, some wants to make it more operationally profitable, and it's primarily the founder's call and the investor's call on how they see. So interestingly, among the top 3 funded sectors during the pandemic, EdTech, of course, completely changed over from April. In fact, I have been a strong proponent of tech-aided learning for very long, and all the arguments we would make till March 2020, after 20th of March, just changed overnight. You don't even need to talk about it. You don't need any adoption. You don't need anything. It's pretty much there. And and this is obviously going through the roof. I mean, almost 5x compared to what it was. It's in fact become fashionable. If you don't have a net tech in your portfolio, you're probably not a great fund at all. So what's basically now focusing on is, of course, people who have some runway to settle in till for at least the next 15 odd months. So if you can survive with people and capital till March 2021 and maybe the Q1, you are probably more likely to get more money. It's no longer about throwing money for acquisition and just building up traction. It's about unit economics and P&L at the end of the day. And of course, like it happens, people contract and you're looking more at small side deals, deals to get going rather than very big, large ticket ones. And along with fintech, of course, agri, mobile, edtech are obviously going to be the large ones. So what's driving all of this? So first and foremost, of course, is this phenomenal mobile subscriber base. I think on hindsight, you realize that how some of our public policies, especially on technology and implementation of telecom, has been influential in some of the ways how we are building up our economy. Not just users of mobile, but also internet users, and the kind of traction they're getting. And add to it, entire world of unbanked citizens in the country. Out of 1.2 billion people, many of them don't have bank accounts. Many of them, our insurance penetration, for example, is about 3% of GDP. Financial markets, both direct and indirect, both through mutual fund as well as capital market, is actually 3 years, and we've been here for quite some time. We've been around since 1875. So along with this, you're seeing a double advantage of not just an unbanked economy, but also a fairly large, educated, penetrated, mobile connectivity driven citizen. And that is obviously leading to some of the subsectors. I mean, of course, payments is one, alternate lending, insurtech, wealth tech, deposits, and many other things which are playing around. Two things have happened around this. One is, if you look at our own broking industry, Zerodha, which is basically a tech company, now is the largest broker in our country. Doesn't have a bank, doesn't incidentally do any marketing at all. Has close to about 1,800 employees, out of which 1,200 are not even graduates. Doesn't do any calling. Only if you call, they call you back once. You won't see any marketing to push any of their products, and works on a model which is based on zero discounting. The company now is the largest broking unit in the country, overtaking any other bank securities broking company which have been around for a while. So this is what the new world looks like. The total funding, of course, of the entire pie, a fair amount is on fintech, almost like 28%. This is only expected to go up. And what demonetization did to the fintech industry was it kind of completely leveraged the change in habits, and especially post-COVID, this has only added up. And with rising consumer base who spend a lot of time on using digital tech, this is good news for everyone who's using them. And then, of course, the lockdown thing, no contact norms, accessibility being an issue, people not being able to move around, non-cash payment, all of this has assisted. So what demod did to fintech, pandemic has done to edtech. But as that happens, one of the challenge, of course, is the fact that regulation gets tighter, and regulation has a huge cost. Regulation and compliance are not easy to handle. There are costs which needs to financial literacy. So these are not something which are something which can be kind of built around. There are two other factors which I just want to highlight. So if you look at our own stock exchange, and I know Mr. Mhatre mentioned about it, I mean, we are actually a tech company. We very quietly morphed from being a brick and mortar stock exchange from early 95 to a tech company. We do about 4 million odd transactions a day at an average speed of about 4 microsecond. 4 microseconds is pretty fast. I mean, if you had a flying license, we could have taken all of you to Mars and brought you back the same day. That's the volume of transactions we do. We trade for almost like 16 hours. We run 2 exchanges. We run the BSE from here. We also run INX, which is at the Gift City, for similar amount of transaction, and that works from New York to Tokyo time zone. The kind of volume we handle is phenomenally very large. I mean, we just get about 3 to 4 hours of downtime to kind of get our systems up and running. Most of the times our day transactions are run from Bombay, but we also run sometimes 2 to 3 days out of a remote center in Hyderabad, and the entire operations is run seamlessly. The second point I want to make is that all of you might know that we were bombed once in '93 during the Bombay attack. Our second attack is not going to be physical. We get attacked on cyber every day. And now with multiple devices using financial technologies, transacting through mobile, from laptop, desktop, and pretty much everything else, we get attacked every day on cyber. And unless there are robust systems built in, there's just no way how this can work. The third is use of AI to kind of build this more stronger. So as a stock exchange, we are kind of the first line of regulator to the entire market. And we've been using a lot of AI and other toolkits to keep an eye on. For example, one of the things we do is run bots every morning to look at news regarding stocks, which we know can influence stock price movement, and actually call them up every morning before trading hours and make them publish status of the press reports and confirm whether they're true or fake, so that people don't get swayed with these kind of news items. So I think as an industry, this is the best time to be in. Fintech obviously is something which is value addition, but at the same time, there are areas of concern which primarily needs. One of the things which all of you might know is that like many other governments around the world, sandbox testing has now been made mandatory in India, which is a good thing, which allows new fintech companies to go test, try, and actually mimic an entire operating system to test how it goes. But sandboxes have also had their own challenges. They are not really the closest to what a market scenario could be. And given that compliance and laws and being operating in a very, very regulated environment can actually stop the innovation which is primarily being driven. So overall, this is what I'd like to present, and happy to take questions. And I look forward to hear from Professor Perrett on his thoughts. Thank you, Mr. Mhatre.
So I thought, Mr. Datta, we let Professor Perrett also speak. And I'm sure there's a lot of overlap in the questions, so that, it could be given to any one of you. So I invite Professor Perrett to take over. It's all yours. Floor is all yours.
Perfect. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Mhatre. Thank you, and a very warm welcome from Switzerland. It's a pleasure to be here. I'll just share my screen now. So I've got a few slides just to run through, and as Mr. Datta said, I tend to make it short and offer a bit more time at the end for questions. So I'm speaking from Switzerland, as you know. I'm half an hour from Zurich, maybe an hour and a half from Geneva, and those two sort of cities are really at the extreme ends of our country anyway. So Zurich to Geneva, 2.5 hours. Is a small country, and I'm based in near Zurich at the University of Applied Sciences, and we do, as Supriya Sachdev has said, have a lot of interaction with India. So I'm going to run through a few areas that are related to the interaction, and I'm also going to actually highlight some specific areas of fintech which may interest you. First of all, I'll be talking about a few facts, focusing a bit on innovation and education, because that's crucial to the whole fintech discussion. I'll be moving on then to talk about the trends. So as Mr. Datta said, before COVID and now more recently this year, so we can see the impact of COVID. I'll be looking at a specific example of the Crypto Valley ecosystem, which is not far from here. It's sort of related to Zug and Zurich. And finally, encouraging us all to consider collaboration. So those are the main points of my presentation now. Maybe on the right, you can see our country, Switzerland. You probably know it's landlocked, so we don't actually have access to the sea. There are no real natural resources apart from water from the mountains. So our main focus has been on knowledge and human resources. Everything we do really comes from, I'd say, from knowledge-based. That's a crucial part. Yeah, as I said, education is one thing. The other area that you could mention as well is tourism. And more recently, this is a link here also with India. I'm sure you recognize the gentleman there in the middle, Mr. Ranveer Singh, who actually spent quite a few sessions, I should say, visits here in the Swiss mountains doing different things. We even named a train after him, so he was very welcome during his visits here. There were very strong connections with India before that. I think that was in 2018. Our friendship goes back to 1948, when we signed the friendship treaty. We just celebrated 70 years of friendship between our two countries. Some key figures that you may recognize: Einstein, who spent much of his education here in Switzerland, lived in Bern, near from here, and of course Roger Federer, a famous sports personality, a tennis player. We've also been active, as Supriya mentioned, with a project which links India and Switzerland together. Here, I'll just show that underneath, Focus India, which has been running for 16 years. Commonalities, but I think you all know we're a very small country, 8.5 million people, compared to India's mammoth population. You know, that we would be dwarfed even with Bombay. So 8.5 million people is actually smaller than many Indian cities. And, you know, even the demographics are quite different. We have more of an elderly population like myself, whereas India is full of these vibrant young people coming up that are under 25 years old. So quite difference in demographics, quite a difference in population, and of course a huge difference in the sheer size. We're very small and India is very big. I'm going to now just mention a few things about innovation, and this is something that Switzerland does a lot of studies on, and this is a plot of different countries who are actually, I think many countries there are represented, many countries of the world, and basically India is a big orange circle there because of its population. China's also a large population there above it. Switzerland's very small at the top, and is what's actually, it's called a cubic spline with 5 knots. That's the line through the middle, and basically the countries that are furthest away from the line indicate high levels of innovation. So India's shown extremely strong intrinsic characteristics fairly recently. This is a study undertaken by INSEAD, Cornell University, and the World Intellectual Property Organization. And I think India now is moving up in terms of its innovation ranking. Switzerland's had a significant advantage because of things like pharma, as you know. So many patents come from a sector which is not far from me, from Basel. So we're at the top there, but a very small country, and also high innovation level. Why do we actually achieve that? I think a lot of it's to do with our education. We don't have the numbers that you do in India. We don't have the numbers that the United States has. So for example, on the left, you've got kind of a ranking based on a few years ago now, from 2014-15. but clearly in terms of numbers, we're being outperformed in the number of top ranking universities. But if we look at that in terms of a per capita, in terms of per 10 million people, we can see that Switzerland does actually appear quite high in the ranking. So the number of highly ranked universities in terms of per 10 million people, for example, puts Switzerland amongst Nordic counterparts like Sweden and other countries. So it's worth noting that although a small country, it's got quite a powerful punch in terms of education. Also, India is also very well known, of course, in the top rankings for your universities. What about the Swiss education system? It was interesting to hear Mr. Datta speak about skills. And one of our main focuses of our whole education system is on skills development. So that's a Swiss landscape of education. It actually shows, for example, vocational training as being an integral part. And it shows also our universities at the top right. So we've got our universities of applied sciences next to the teacher training universities, next to the more theoretical universities of ETH and EPFL, where we can do PhDs, doctorates, etc. But what's also interesting to note is the permeability between the different institutions. So it is possible for somebody that goes to a vocational training school to actually move up to the right and actually go into a stream which is more academic, and the mix of practice and theory is very well known in Switzerland. It's called the dual system, and it is, according to research, a contributing factor to innovation. Just now moving on to finance, and I think we all know Switzerland has got a reputation for finance. In some previous years, that hasn't been so good, but now the reputation is getting better. We've got actually now leading financial centers. Zurich is well known for its financial center, also Geneva and Basel. Those three areas are particularly well known. A lot of employees from Switzerland work in finance, estimated in 2015 to be about 5%. We generate a lot of value from the banks, 60 billion in 2015. And as well as the banks, there are also, of course, insurance companies and pension funds. Swiss economy is considered to be resilient. It's also done reasonably well under the threat of COVID, but there are challenges this year. They have shown in this year of the COVID. I'm going to stay with finance, and I'm going to now look at the fintech companies. These are much small compared to India, of course. We have 382 fintech companies, more than 800 related to blockchain. Don't forget, blockchain is not only fintech, but other sectors as well. And we have now 2 regulated crypto banks. So quite a significant move forward. Just recently regulated SIBA and Signum. Which areas are they operating in? So the product areas, we can see a distribution there, more than a third in investment management. This is fintech landscape. If we look at the technology, we've got more than a third active in DLT, distributed ledger technology, blockchain. Moving on now to a more detailed look. These are some of the companies that are active in those different spaces. Some of you may know some names, so I'm not going to dwell on this, but you will have a copy of the slides, I'm sure. This is a very recent landscape with companies represented in investment management, banking infrastructure, deposits and lending, and payments. Moving on now to our country and our dynamics with the different regions. So I mentioned we're a leading international financial center, but much of our research is actually conducted very close to our fintech centers. So we do a lot of research in fintech at universities like the ETH in Zurich. We do research down in EPFL, and more increasingly now in Lugano, the Italian-speaking sector. So we've got a dynamic created between our fintech centers and R&D, which is being performed at many universities. I mentioned there just the 3 top universities. Nevertheless, there are challenges. And I've done this was done a few years back by a student of mine. Actually, she's working for a Swiss financial insurance company now, Swiss Re, which is also based in Bangalore. So if we look at strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, we can see that Switzerland has really a good quality infrastructure. We've got excellent educational system. We've got a trustworthy brand. But on the other side, in terms of weaknesses, we've been slow moving. We haven't been as dynamic as certainly Bangalore or Mumbai. We've had a funding gap, which is gradually closing. Some of the threats, we've had historically a little bit of a lack of funding, and really we're a bit of a risk-averse culture. Some of the opportunities, FINMA has also opened up its regulations. So that's the financial regulating authority here in Switzerland, and that's become increasingly more open. I'm going to go into a little bit more detail there in a moment. Investment. So up until 2019 for startups, there was significant investment which increased quite dramatically even in 2019. Since 2019, that's taken a blow, and COVID has had an impact there, and fintech has also suffered. More the investment, the greater part of the investment now is focused on life sciences and biotech. So a more recent report, which I don't think I've shown there, no, a more recent report shows COVID has taken a toll. Another recent survey showed IT security as being significant, and 74% of the people in this survey highlighted IT security as being a top priority. We're actually very active in security as cybersecurity as part of the Swiss fintech landscape. There's also some detail there, the firms that are active. More recently, there's been an active and dynamic movement in the insurtech startup scene. And these are some of the companies that are very much active in that space. They're delivering quite often DLT blockchain solutions. They're delivering artificial intelligence solutions. For example, Vlot, Refox, and Tony Digital, which is many of these are often funded by and supported by some of the banks. Crypto Valley, very well known now in Switzerland, and it's extended beyond its original ecosystem of Zug. It's home to 5 unicorns, so Ethereum, Finity, Polkadot, Bitmain, and Libra, all well-known unicorns. And Zug was the original sort of focal point, but now this has expanded to other parts of the country. Finally, I'd like to, I've listened to quite a few of the presentations. I'd like to say thank you to everybody here. And what really is encouraging to see now is how we're moving together in a digital space. And I'd like to thank Professor Mani for inviting me and also for the whole crew here in organizing this, because I think this is really an excellent initiative to encourage collaboration. And my final slide is basically on a message to everyone here. So not just to people in Mumbai, but also the whole of India. So can we really focus on collaboration more? Can we actually look at strengths, our complementary strengths? Can we also look at things like the combination of growth, vibrancy, innovation, and quality together? We know India is very, very dynamic in the whole IT sector, Switzerland in the financial services sector. So I would suggest a call to action could be looking at complementary areas where we could move together. Finally, I have a few questions as a final slide. These are some of the things we're discussing here in our university and also in our country. How will our entrepreneurs and our startups collaborate in the fintech space in the future? How can we, Indian and Swiss SMEs, and also entrepreneurs, find collaborators in the virtual work society? So, you know, we can find each other through spaces like this, but are they so easy accessible for entrepreneurs and SMEs? And what will aid really coherent solutions to benefit Indian enterprises? So those are some of the things that I'd leave you with as a final slide. These are some of the questions that we're also thinking about at the moment in our ecosystem in Switzerland. Thank you very much indeed. And I'll stop my share now. Thank you.
Hi, I just thought I'll pop in a quick question while Professor Mani and Supriya are compiling the audience questions. Professor Perrett, this is for you. I was amazed to see there are 5 unicorns. I know India has the volume of fintech companies, but you have got the more successful ones. Very quickly, if you have studied these unicorns, 2 or 3 factors which converted them into $1 billion plus, in fact, $10 billion plus organizations in such a short time.
Yeah, I think, you know, the attraction of getting these, by the way, I should add, of course, that those unicorns are really international companies. So the attraction of Switzerland is, and I should also stress this, that Switzerland is a very open country. You know, we've got very many international entrepreneurs here. So in Zurich, you know, many of the fintech startups are also internationally focused. And I think one key point of attraction is its openness, its international dimension, its openness for international human resources, and also the actual ability to back everything up with good human resources, which actually is fed from our universities. So the human resources part, although, you know, you might have 1 or 2 excellent universities, we actually feed our ecosystems with like universities of applied sciences, which actually make a significant difference to the startups. They can always actually get good quality human resources very close at hand. For example, we also have a School of Life Sciences, and many of the biotech startups now are actually coming from that School of Life Sciences. So I would suggest it's a combination of some of the factors that I actually highlighted, but in detail, principally human resources and an openness to internationalization.
Thank you. Am I on? Yes, thank you. We'll take more audience questions, and I'll hand it back to Supriya to coordinate the questions from the chat box.
Am I audible? Yeah. So thank you very much to both the speakers for their insightful presentations. I'd like to know if you can share some more case study of like, if I'm talking specifically from the collaboration point of view between the 2 economies, if there's any more case study that, you know, we can share with the audience.
Yeah, I think what we're doing, I mean, we've got different levels of interaction. So if you're talking about Switzerland and India, we're currently negotiating a free trade agreement at the highest political level. So we're linked to EFTA countries, Switzerland's linked to EFTA countries. And there was a very good engagement a couple of months ago where the Indian embassy took part, and many Swiss politicians and economic colleagues took part. So I think there's very strong collaboration at the highest level, engaged with the free trade agreement, which is ongoing at the moment, but it's expected to reach a conclusion soon. And secondly, there's strong, India is rated as one of our most important markets. So Switzerland, you know, the market size of Switzerland is very small only with 8 million people. We do have the EU on our doorstep. We do have access to the EU because we've got all the agreements, etc. But actually, India is a very, very important market for Swiss companies. So there are many collaborations going on with treaties at the highest level, but also with universities and with companies. So our Focus India project liaises with companies as well. So we're actually partnering with Accenture, who, as you know, is very active in India. So our Zurich office of Accenture, I mean, not mine, but the country office of Accenture Zurich uses India, Accenture India, Mumbai, and also Bangalore to actually provide solutions for the financial services sector. So, you know, the banks, the insurance companies are using Accenture in India to actually deliver really excellent, innovative solutions for customers. So I think there are different examples here, but broadly, I would say there's a strong collaboration at many levels, from education right up to the highest level of our governments. Yeah.
Okay. There are more questions from the audience. One is, this is for you, Ambarish. I think, what support or guidance is given by BSE startups?
Right, I was just picking up that question. Yeah, so firstly, you know, we are pretty much sector agnostic. In fact, when we started off, we consciously stayed away from fintech because everyone thought, since we run an exchange, fintech is something which we'd like to do. But no, that's not how it is. Our entire portfolio actually has more startups from other sectors, including as diverse as, you know, we have startups in machine language, we have in wearable devices and social, and you name it. So it's pretty much across. The second is, like every other accelerator, you know, there's obviously a lot of things which comes by as a package. You know, it could be space, it could be other thing. But I think what we really add value is not just we help them raise money, but we also support them by getting them pilot projects, prototypes, and stuff like that. So of the 400 odd startups we've incubated so far, I think we've had the minimum number of mortalities. And 2018, Forbes did a story about 30 startups under the age of 30. We had 3 of them on that list. So that probably talks about, you know, how well or bad it has done as an accelerator.
Okay, nice, thank you. There's another question. Now this is for Professor Yu. What are the crypto trends to watch out for in 2021? If you could share some insights.
I think it's a very dynamic sector, and I think it's good if it changes very frequently. But the whole, as I said, the whole sort of crypto area now is expanded to the greater Zurich region. So it's not just Zug. I mean, Zug actually, as a canton, has a very special tax. So you probably know in Switzerland, we don't actually have just a federal tax. We also have a cantonal tax. And Zug is one of the most attractive places to live in Switzerland because of its tax. And if you do actually live in Zug, you can actually pay your taxes using certain cryptocurrencies. So that whole sort of region is really very digitally focused with currencies. And I think you can buy all sorts of things using cryptocurrencies. But I'd suggest in terms of trends, there are, you know, it's difficult to say what the landscape will be like in a year or so. What is very significant is that the Swiss government has recently opened up its whole regulatory framework and become more open. So I think, you know, they've put through some legislation which is very much open and not really restrictive in terms of regulation. It's just actually been discussed and I think approved in the federal parliament. So I think there are things to watch out for in the future. While I've emphasized the success stories, there have also been failures as well. We mustn't forget those. So we have to be very careful. And I think we need to be a little bit cautious about recommending particular trends. But I think if you are active in certain areas and look out for key trends, I think you should be able to get up to date fairly quickly. There are many Swiss FinTech associations that are also very interested in international collaboration, which actually leads us into another question. You know, the incubator programs, many of the universities, the associations, and even, you know, the city areas offer incubator programs for startups. I think now they are really open to international collaboration there. So we did a project, you mentioned it, on innovation hubs, and many of those are focused on fintech. So for example, the impact hubs and the incubator hubs around Zurich and Geneva are also attracting not just startups, but of course, more significantly, investment. So that would also be something for Indian startups or Indian corporates to look at as well.
Great. So, Ambarish, there are a couple of more questions for you. Any challenges you would foresee for fintech in post-pandemic era in India, and how are these challenges being mitigated?
Yes, I think it's an interesting question. So firstly, the entire fintech or let's say the financial services business in India is heavily regulated. I mean, one reason why crypto isn't recognized in India is because any money which is not a fiat money or not printed by the government is not recognized. It's as simple as that. And any government, any regulator, especially in our case, the RBI, is paranoid about anyone else trying to do anything with this. And this is very obvious. So, in post-pandemic, while the fintechs are identifying, so one of the things we must realize is a lot of the fintechs are actually unbundling some of these services. Like, so if you actually see financial services, they were all in one box. You had lending, deposits, products, insurance, all in one box. And what the fintechs are doing, that actually taking one piece out at a time and slowly unbundling this. Now, everywhere in the world, the innovation always leads regulation. You don't regulate first and then innovation comes, because it would never happen. It's always innovation which happens first and then the regulation happens. And regulators per se always have a catch up to do. And what happens, therefore, in that catch-up is that sometimes they become extreme paranoid. So it leads to knee-jerk, and it often leads to complete clamp down. And we've seen that in a lot of public policy issues, right? So, for example, when we had Uber and Ola driving in, for a very long time, no one woke up. But when incidents started happening, there was severe backlash, and a lot of states started banning. And even now, there are many states who don't allow. For example, if you go to Goa, there's no Ola, there's no Uber, they don't allow, the taxi associations don't allow. So regulation, therefore, has become extremely challenging. Now, what is happening post-pandemic is that transactions have gone up, and because it has gone up, it's now going to go higher, and it's now come to a radar where the regulation and compliance costs are going to go up. I think one of the first challenges which any fintech is going to face is typically related to compliance. Number one. Number two, how secure is the data? Is it being secure within the guidelines? Where is the data kept? Where is it stored? How is the data being used? Who has access to it? And stuff like that. And third, of course, is how interoperable are we with the overall compliance and reporting norms? I think startups are formed in such a manner. The genre is quick fix and lean teams and stuff like that. And often compliance is run by just one guy or sometimes by no one. And as a result, that is probably a high risk as a challenge, because compliance demands are high. Compliance also is expensive, and regulators can be nasty. They can keep asking you a lot of questions. So unless someone can turn around and respond to these things quickly, they would probably have a challenge. And that might lead to stifling that innovation itself. It would become so tight that no one just wants to do anything going ahead. So I think those are probably some of the challenges which fintechs will probably face post-pandemic, and it's only expected to go up and high.
So are these challenges, Peter, this is for you, are these challenges similar in nature in Swiss economy, or is it, as in, do you resonate with these kind of challenges?
Absolutely, yeah. I think we also are seeing challenges at the moment, and investment and challenges dealing with the COVID is creating a rethinking in many situations. Exactly. yeah, I'd like to echo what Mr. Datta said exactly.
Okay, okay. So there are a couple of more questions, and I think we have a few minutes left. I'll just quickly go through it. So Amrish, when do you foresee digital identity getting into mainstream?
Yeah, so it's an interesting space. I think all of it boils down finally, how it is adopted and stuff like that. And digital identity can take many shapes. It's probably started in some form, in some avatars, if I may use, and it can only get better from here on. And some of these innovations goes to this hype cycle as well. So uh, uh, I mean, completely be convinced that regulators go exactly reverse of these hype cycles. So the higher the hype, lower their enthusiasm about adopting that technology, and they're often extremely unenthused about some of these things. So while the initial days of digital identities is probably quite interesting, but I think we are a little far away as of now. It might take a while, but it and take a while in the innovation space is just about 18 to 20 months. So I mean, I think next 20 months might show up a lot of interesting things.
Okay. Professor Mani, I believe there's another question.
Oh yeah, in fact, Baiju Mehta wishes to ask a question. You can unmute him and he can ask the question. Go ahead, Baiju.
Hi, can you people hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, it'd be nice if you can put on your video.
Okay, give me a minute. This for Mr. Datta. Mr. Datta, I would like you to know, just once again, revisit that bot which you were talking about, that every morning the BSE runs a bot. I just want to understand what exactly you people do with that, running that bot. I just missed that thing out.
Sure. So basically, like I said, see, we were a brick and mortar exchange, right? What is called as the outcry system till 95. And just so that all of you know, we are the oldest public institution still working in India. So we were set up in 1875 and we have been in existence in 140 years. Now, what has happened is post 95, we got technology enabled, and now you can trade from home. You don't need to physically come to buy and sell. So brokers can operate from anywhere. But over a period of time, transactions have gone up. And today, on a good day, we do about 4 million transactions. That is actually higher than what Twitter would do on a US election day, by the way. We do that every day. We do it for about 16 hours of trading, and we run 2 exchanges. So the volumes of transactions are phenomenally very high. And our speed of transaction is about 4 microseconds, which is a 1/100th of a second. And with computing speed, we might be able to get into 1 picosecond in the next few years' time. So these are phenomenal transactions. So, and out of these transactions, 80% of trades worldwide are non-human now, which means that these trades are not done by people like you and me. They're run by robots and bots and other algos, and they drive the trade. Now, you would know that news and rather stocks are driven by news and mood and mania. And news plays a big role in stock price movement. So, and with digital connectivity, what is now happening is that a lot of type of different news comes in. So let's say, for example, tomorrow a news comes in that a company A has decided to buy X number of products, and that can influence the stock price movement. So we have a team which basically runs bots every morning pre-trade and identifies some of these trending news items and then picks them up automatically, and then calls up the compliance regulatory officer of that company to make a public statement about that news being true or false. And that statement is then published on all our platforms, including Twitter, website, and everything, so that investors know whether the news is true or not true, and therefore make a conscious decision call on investing. So, and some of these are so large and huge that these are not manual driven anymore. These are now driven by intelligent tools and toolkits and widgets and all that. I must also tell you that the entire technology is homegrown, run on open source using Indian engineers. There is no foreign tech, and these are all homegrown tech, and it's probably the largest financial technology operations worldwide with this kind of speed and volume.
I do know, because a friend of mine was involved primarily in one of those queries that you run while selecting the stock and buying the stock. My last question to you, sir, is a couple of years back, right? I forgot the name of the company. They used to run an AI bot, and it actually used to monitor. And the case study was something like this: that we have often call drops happening, right? If you are a Vodafone user, you'll be very aware of it, that call drops keeps on happening. Now, what this guy used to do was, they did it for a telecom company, I think in France or someplace. They would monitor the call drop, and if it breaches a particular level, right, immediately, right, the telecom company will send a message to the person whose calls are getting dropped, saying that, no, we apologize for this thing happening to you, and we'll give you some extra data free, or something like that. They would do it. Now they were trying to implement this kind of a AI part, right, into the exchange, where the AI will run and figure out what's happening, what's the pattern of the trade happening on which sector, or on which vertical, on which company, and then based on that, right, it will inform the person which stock to buy. Now my question is, right, does BSE, right, you said that I actually do the trading sitting at home. Now, does BSE, I can run an AI and I can leave it. I let the bot operate my thing. Does BSE allow the bot to operate it, or you still require a human intervention to buy the stock?
No, so algos around the world pretty much do everything, right, from buying to selling without any human intervention. So, and that's how you do so many million transactions without any human touch. I mean, look at arbitration. So let's say a company listed on both the stock exchanges being traded at a differential price of 10 basis point. Now to make a $1 million worth transaction between both and leverage an arbitrage between both the stocks humanly is impossible to do, because we are talking about microseconds here. So the microsecond speed I'm talking about is the time it takes for someone to put a price quote on the system and get a response against that for every quote. So 4 microsecond is very, very fast. I mean, you can blink about 3 times in 1 second if you're very good. So this is humanly impossible to do, right? You can't punch, and if you do, you can have fat finger errors like we've seen in the past. So these are run by algos. These are run by smart algos where they have limited access, and they often crawl, troll, and do. So 80% of trades now on our exchange is pretty much non-human.
Okay, so in short, can we in future foresee the elimination of all the guys who sit on the terminal and they do the punching?
Yeah. So, I mean, yes. I mean, technology always does that, right? I mean, it removes inefficiency in the system. I mean, I remember, if I can use an analogy from learning, I remember Arthur Clarke, the science fiction writer, sometime back was asked, would technology replace teachers? So he thought for a while, and then he said, if it can, then it should. So the challenge is on people who run those desks. If they're inefficient and they can't compete with tech, then tech would indeed replace them. And we're seeing that pretty much everywhere. I mean, look at bank tellers. I mean, you would go to a bank, wait in the queue, ask for cash. It got automated because you could go to the counter, you could go to the ATM, withdraw cash. And then came internet banking, where you don't even need to go. You can just do it at click of a button. So if banks don't improvise and don't bring technology, then technology will certainly override that. So I think it's a question of how much we want and how technology gets adopted, but it's pretty much doable. In fact, if you actually see in the last few months and for about a year, we are actually seeing equity dealer jobs being now diminishing. They're no longer equity dealer jobs as a dealer. They're all become relationship managers. This wasn't the case, and this is just about 8, 10, 12 months back. So if you were skilling for an equity dealer guy for a job role, I think that job role is pretty much dead. Is dead, because you're no longer calling customers and pitching for trades. You're now becoming relationship managers, where they're advising customers to buy, sell, invest, and do many other things. So yeah.
Ambarish, you made a very interesting point, which otherwise today we use the jargon Atmanirbhar Bharat. You said a lot of all this technology has been developed in-house and locally, keeping in mind the demands of the local market. I'm just about tempted to go to Mr. Suresh Mhatre and ask him, The company which he used to serve for so many decades, TCS was always seen as a torchbearer in this direction. And when we spoke about TCS, whether it be MarTech or FinTech or any such applications, they were always a forerunner. Suresh, would you just enlighten us a little on some of the earliest steps that TCS took in this direction?
So the first approach was always getting the invoices generated and reconciled, and that was the first application in mid 80s at the Bombay Stock Exchange backend. We were just churning out and reconciling the settlement, because settlements would happen every 15 days then, unlike now when there's almost full time. So there used to be the ring, and at the end of the settlement there had to be certain things printed out. Then income tax statements, capital gain statements, etc., so that the chartered accountants can do their back-end work. The moment it went into internals, most of the stock exchanges set up their own IT centers and their own data centers, because data privacy and security became a primary driving force. The algorithms, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Datta must have come in by the beginning of about 2000 in very rudimentary forms in the New York Stock Exchange.
Yeah.
And then subsequently, I think in India, maybe in the last 5-7 years, we are seeing predominant trading having switched to the algorithms. In that, these are mostly private algorithms developed by combination of college professors. Companies like the TCS, Infosys, or Wipro have really contributed in that area. We were the backroom boys. We were running the big systems, carrying out these transactions in the back end. Or have I lost you?
Yeah, I think he's having some network issues. Let me see if I can get him back.
Yeah, he's back. Yeah.
Yeah, that was an interesting point. And Chintan here, who is here with us as part of the core organizing team, himself is a very sincere follower of latest technology. And we often regard him as one of those who perhaps does more reading and more speaking on these areas. And his own personal favorite is blockchain. Peter, he has some questions for you in this direction. I'm going to request him to engage in a discussion with you. Over to you, Chintan and Peter. Let's have a little bit of chat on this.
Oh, thank you so much. Indeed, this is a great opportunity to interact with you, Peter. And I would like to ask you, because definitely looking at the insights, what you have shared, I want the secret sauce. And that is where I am asking a question. What are your favorite resources for latest trends and knowledge in fintech? And any book would you recommend that we can read? And how do we keep ourselves updated like you, so that we are able to discuss things with you?
Yeah, thank you very much indeed, Mr. Ozar. Those are very important questions. And these are now, my answers are coming not from my own personal subjective feelings, but more from solid research. So what I would do is suggest that you do look for more solid academic reports. And as we know, it's a very dynamic topic. So a book published 4 or 5 years ago will already be outdated. But what I can recommend is that colleagues in another university, not my university, but at the university, also applied sciences near Zug, published this report. I'll just pass it on to everybody there. It's called the IFZ FinTech Study. It's updated pretty much every year. And they just published one, I think 2020, which uses data from up to actually the end of 2019. So that's one study. I'm just looking at it. It's on my laptop. It's how many pages is it? It's about 188 pages. And it really is packed with a lot of information on Switzerland. But also, if I look through the table of contents, there's also an international focus of it as well. So it does deal with, for example, global fintech companies. It does deal with an analysis of the hubs, for example. So you can get some pretty good update information from that type of report. That's been done by academics. So it's very neutral and not subjective. What I would be cautious about would be looking at more consulting reports, because they do tend to, go with the hype. So I would try to look at the data-driven reports like that one there I mentioned. There are quite a few people publishing at different universities around Switzerland. So, for example, University of Zurich has its sort of fintech expertise, University of Basel as well, ETH. So many of those universities publish reports themselves, and they're usually very up to date. And I would recommend that you have a look at those rather than going with the more kind of subjective literature that you might find on the internet generally, that are often done by consultants. I'm not saying they're wrong, but I'm suggesting that the academic report's a little bit more neutrally focused. Is that okay for you, sir?
Yeah, definitely, sure. This has definitely, because I mean, I was equally curious to know that how you keep yourself updated and what are the resources, so that at least as a student of yours, I can also start following similar resources. So thank you so much for sharing insights on that. Thank you, sir. Over to you, Professor Mani and Supriya.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you very much indeed.
Yeah. Ambarish, there's one thought which is going around in many people's minds. Today, we see so much of emphasis on small and medium enterprises because they were in the limelight during the lockdown, and many of them had difficulties in even sustaining their businesses. So as part of all the incubation work that you are doing, are there some special packages? Are there some special offerings for the SMEs? If you can throw some light on that also as part of the work you all do.
Sure. So we actually run a separate exchange for the small and medium enterprises. And so that we have actually now listed close to about 380 small medium enterprises. They can come to the exchange and raise as little as 1 crore to X number, and they can then be present. In fact, even during lockdown, I think we have had about 10 or 12 IPOs where they have come to the market and raised money. The good thing is one is they are able to raise money, capital in an open platform and probably use it for expansion. Second, while they're listed on our small medium enterprise exchange, they also are eligible to move up to the main board. And out of the 380 odd startups we've had, or SMEs we have listed so far, I think about 80 of them have already moved up to the main board in the last about 5-6 years time. So there is a pathway for progress. Our response on the MSME platform has been very, very interesting, and market returns are very healthy. The kind of valuation they've got post listing is phenomenal, and we are quite hopeful that as we kind of as the economy kind of expands and gets back to track, we'll see more such company coming to list themselves and raise money. So while we do the incubation and startup at a very early stage, but for more matured companies, we do have a platform where we help them raise money as much as they want and help them kind of become more professionally run and list on the main board.
That's wonderful. And would you remember as a profile, what kind of cross-section of such SMEs do reach you? Is it leaning towards a certain segment, or you have a heterogeneous mix?
No, we in fact have a heterogeneous mix. It could be manufacturing, it could be textile, it could be pretty much anyone. And we get a very electric mix of micro and small enterprises. And these are typically the traditional MSMEs which you and I know, which are family run, who kind of use debt to grow, who had the first, who have some unique products, maybe a few patents as well, who now are looking to scale up. And some of the companies which are listed are very interesting. We also run an index for them separately where investors can know what they do, and there's more price discovery for their activities. But pretty much across the sector, and very interesting profiles as well.
You did mention that they can migrate from the SME to the larger company base. Now, does that happen instantly, or it is watched for some time and then you allow them to migrate upwards?
No, so how it happens is the junior board, if I may call, has lesser listing regulations. So, if the turnover requirement for the main board is X, then this is X minus Y and stuff like that. So they need to qualify for the main board listing norms as they go by. And usually, if you see out of 380, if 80 have been able to qualify and move, that's not a bad strike record. It's almost like 30-40%. So post listing, they qualify for it, and then they need to apply, go through a process of due diligence, and then they move up. So it's the qualifying norm which distinguishes them, where can they be listed, and they need to follow the compliance and regulations to be able to do so.
Okay. Peter, it's another question for you, and that is, in India, very often when we try to implement technology on a large scale, we end up discussing the digital divide, considering that the rural-urban population is very, very skewed. What is the scenario back there in Switzerland, and how do you tackle such issues, if any?
So I would suggest the digital divide in Switzerland and other European countries is not so pronounced as it is in India in terms of urban-rural. But I would suggest that there are differences, and some of those differences are significant in demographic groups. So we've got a very large elderly population, so they're also non-real digital natives by any means. So the demographic differences are a challenge. And also there has been a sort of a fear of data sharing. Some of the big tech companies have also maybe had a few scandals. So people in Switzerland are very cautious about sharing data. They're not really keen to go over to apps just en masse. So for example, the COVID app was fairly well implemented, but there were still people that didn't really feel good about using it. So even though it was the data wasn't kept for longer than a certain time, there were still people that had a certain fear of that. So I think our challenges in that respect are not so much between urban and rural, but more between the demographic layers, but also the fact that we're not really so digitally open as maybe young people in India. And I would suggest that that has got slightly better now because of COVID, because we're all now moving towards more digital solutions through our forced pandemic, but there are still challenges in that respect, Professor Mani.
Okay. Ambarish, any response? How do you feel the situation here, and has it been a change in the last couple of years?
In the context of?
The digital divide and the ability to get more and more of people, let's say, from the rural setting, embracing technology more willingly.
Yeah, so I think, we are pretty much a fertile ground for all the right things available. I mean, we have large mobile penetration, there are unbanked people, and there is a challenge of transmission of financial services. So whether it is bank account, lending, payment, insurance, name any product, we find it difficult to reach the last mile without leakages. Technology solves that because it brings a robust, or let's say at least fairly robust framework by which we are able to transmit that. Now, having said that, our technology divide, while mobile penetration is very high, may not be exceptionally very good. And if you see adoption of technology, most of the adopted technology in our country are mostly the ones which are fairly, let's say, idiot-proof. Like I was just seeing the other day that of all the tools we use, I think the most popular tool is WhatsApp. But WhatsApp also is one of the only tools which has no help menu. It has no learning development training module how to use it, and also doesn't even have a support number or support email ID to call for any help. So it's extremely easy to use. And if someone can't even figure out how to use WhatsApp, then must be really technologically redundant. Now, all our financial services or toolkits and apps are not as easily built at that. And that's why yesterday's permission of allowing WhatsApp to do payment transfers and other is very interesting, because what we are now doing is we are riding over a very easy tool to do that. So this digital divide is obviously going to narrow down as we go. And I think the real key is can we stop leakages at last mile delivery? And it's not about the urban financial services, that fintech is a matter of convenience, choice, and stuff like that. But it's really the unbanked, can we bring them onto the basket? And that I think is going to get resolved now with easier to use tools, lighter tools, tools which people can use without being fear of being scammed and stuff like that. I think that probably is really what's going to make a difference.
Good. That's a very valid point. Very often they used to say this, that if you want wisdom, ask someone older than you. But if you want wisdom about WhatsApp, ask someone younger than you. So
Right.
this is the way WhatsApp has really taken the nation by storm. Indeed, a very, very fruitful discussion. I'd request Mr. Suresh Mhatre as the chairperson of the session to make a few concluding remarks before we hand over to Supriya for drawing a formal close to this session. Over to you, Suresh.
Thank you, Professor Mani. Very interesting sessions. I was making some notes. Professor Perrett has very rightly talked about the different, not only technologies, but the need for alliances, how the growth has happened, and how a small country, perhaps smaller than even one of the major cities of India in terms of population, has managed to create more than 300 fintech companies. They have managed to create very large unicorns with international funding. The collaboration that happens to create a unicorn from their university education level right up to the way they are internationally linked with alliances, I think it's something we need to learn for. This is something that I'm sure our viewers, listeners would like to explore further in terms of how these alliances can really help us. Ambarish Datta talked about Bombay Stock Exchange, one of the largest and the oldest and a pillar of really Mumbai, and nobody can miss not just the building, but the influence that stock market and share market has had on the growth of Mumbai. How they have adopted technology, being established in 1870s or whatever, I forget the exact date, but such a long ago, and today are the leading users of technology for financial transactions, for millions of transactions, running it smoothly day by day, handling and anticipating and handling potential problems. Their disaster recovery site in Hyderabad seamlessly functioning when they switch over. All these are terrific technology, not only innovation, but really technological support. And I think that was a great example of where fintech in India is headed. Between the two speakers, we got a view both of the international flavor and actually what is happening in India. And I think all of us take away a lot of learning from these sessions. So thank you, Professor Mani, for the speakers that you've selected, and back to you.
Thank you. Supriya.
Thank you.
Thank you, Suresh sir, for so for summarizing and concluding the session so well. And I'd like to thank the audience as well for asking very relevant questions, because I feel that the essence of the presentations that our speakers had, it extended very well in the form of the question answers. So thank you very much, our audience as well. And thank you once again to Professor Pieter Perrett and Ambarish for your valuable time and for sharing your insights. And over to you, Mani sir.
Thanks, Supriya, for anchoring this session so well. And thank you, Suresh, Peter, and Ambarish for so readily agreeing. And it makes it even more challenging in the digital world when so much is happening around us. And very often we are not even in control of our time. it still is kudos to all of you for actually being here with us this evening and enlightening us so much. I'll be failing in my duty if I once again don't acknowledge the 18 panelists and distinguished speakers we've had over the last 3 days. It just looked like we started on Thursday evening, and here we are on Saturday night. And of course, except for Peter, because it's still evening for him. But it's been a wonderful learning journey. I'd like to thank the core team, Chintan, Supriya, Jagmohan, for the wonderful work, very ably supported by our secretariat, Oindrila, Lakshmi, and Supriya, for the wonderful work that they have done behind the scenes for the last 8 to 10 weeks to put this whole thing together. Thanks, audience, because without you, it becomes even more difficult in Zoom. Though your cameras might be off, we still know that you're somewhere there, because that is the advantage of digital, as one might say so. I'm delighted on behalf of the entire Bombay Management Association to say that this has been a wonderful learning experience. For some of us who might have missed some of the sessions, I assure you sometime after Diwali, we will post all this on the BMA YouTube channel, so you can grab up some of the sessions which you might have missed, so that you can get the benefit of the wisdom that was shared by our stalwarts during the last 3 days. It's always a good habit to close on time. We usually end on time. We always pride ourselves to start on time, but I'm really grateful to the panelists for being conscious about this. Saturday evening is a time I know a lot of people have other agenda, but today the learning, I think, overrid everything else. Can I request everyone to switch on your cameras? Let's have a group photograph with this panel too, and keep this memory of the wonderful learning experience that all of us had. Your feedback is welcome in the chat box. We continue to offer our BMA sessions on the digital platform. We have a Diwali Dhamaka coming up for you. Coming Wednesday Wisdom webinar is a session on happiness quotient. And I'm sure that's something all of us are searching for. And next Friday, as part of our Friday fundamentals, we are having a musical evening. Now you might wonder, musical evenings are normally a way of life, but this musical evening is going to be performances by doctors. So this is a doctor's musical evening where the doctor is not going to be treating us with medicines, but he's going to be treating us with music. So this is the Diwali special coming up. Obviously, you'll get the details as part of our mailing that you do get. Those of you who are not members of BMA, here's a good opportunity to join the BMA family and join us in this learning journey. Waiting for Lakshmi, Andrula, Supriya to give us the heads up that they've covered everybody across the 2 screens. Thank you, everybody. Good night. Stay safe and stay blessed. BMA signing off on the Digital Leadership Summit 2020. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, sir.
Thank you. Thanks, Professor.
Very
Thanks,
good
Supriya.
session. Thank you.
Thanks.
Wonderful.
Thank you all.
Thank you.